sure I'm in frame.
Oh, they're cutting your head up.
Yeah, we call that a haircut.
It's more like a scalp cut.
Yeah, exactly. Not a lot of hair.
No, just because it actually cuts your entire scalp, not just the hair. Okay. Jacob, how you doing, brother?
Good.
I'm very excited
Good to
have
be here, dude.
Yeah. I'm very excited that you came by and then you decided to take your time. There's quite a few reasons I wanted to talk to you. One of them, I guess, to kind of kick off with the most obvious one. You are. What do you call that? Like, they don't call them traceurs anymore, right? They're like parkour guys. What do you call that?
Parkour athlete. I
Parkour
think is
athlete,
like the common nomenclature nowadays.
Nowadays, yeah. Because when I was in the game, it was like traceur and whatever. It was like, yeah. So we actually started probably around the same time. I don't remember where I met you. Did I meet you at Tempest or?
It would have been Tempest or one of the like PKLA events. Yeah.
No, I think it was Tempest.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Tempest. But yeah, but did you used to go to the White Lotus when it was still around?
I think I've only been to Jam since it was Jam. I don't think I actually went to White Lotus.
Okay, so maybe I started just a little bit before, right before they kind of, maybe a year before they closed.
Yeah, I think we've known each other since like either late 2014 or sometime 2015 for sure.
I feel like it was earlier than that. I feel it was like maybe
It could
13.
be. I mean, I moved here in 2013, and I don't think I met parkour people until probably midway through 2014. I started having people visit who were like linked into the community, and then I like branched out and met more people. Actually, funnily enough, when I like first started hanging out with people in LA, everyone was convinced that I was from Switzerland because I had Kevin Fleury and Christian Harmat and a couple other like OGs from Switzerland that were staying with me at the time, that when I was coming to events and like introducing myself to people, everyone was like, wow, like Jacob speaks really good English compared to these other guys.
Wait, well, what? Oh, because you were
like
hanging out with them?
We all look similar, like sweatpants, you know, like not good beards, like wearing fucking hats. Like we looked like we were like in the same crew, and everyone was always like, yeah, like Jacob speaks way better English than the other guys do. It's so weird. Just because they didn't know, like, oh, he's not from California either. Like he's.
Where were you born, by the way?
Massachusetts.
Oh, you were born in Massachusetts.
Which is so funny to me every time people ask. Cause I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like you can't hear me. You can't hear my accent. But also I can swear on this,
Massachusetts
right?
has an accent?
I can swear, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, excellent, cool.
But by the way,
Massachusetts definitely has an accent. What are you talking about? You're hearing it right now.
This is Massachusetts accent.
Boston.
Boston.
Yeah.
It's this. Well, Boston is very like identifiable for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not like, I feel like the majority of Massachusetts doesn't have the same thickness to that accent, right?
No, it's probably like parts of it are more rural, but I'm from a pretty urban, I mean, I guess it's a city, but I think of it as a town. I think of everything in Massachusetts as a town, but I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts, which is, I believe, the third or fourth largest city in Mass. And yeah, like it's just very urban. So typically in those areas, you get a little lazier with the dialect, and you can hear it more. You can hear it when I'm angry or drunk is the easiest way to hear it.
It's interesting you say that because my accent also comes out way more.
Where are you from again?
I was born in Russia. I grew up in Israel, and obviously my accent is still present, but it's not as present as it was, let's say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And if I'm actually, like when I used to act, if I was preparing for a role, so I worked on it, I could actually make a pretty decent American accent, but it would take a lot of effort because traveling through the vowels, that function is very difficult for people who speak Hebrew or German or things that are more like, they're not as based on vowels. Like we don't put so much emphasis on vowels. So that alone is like a big commitment. When I get drunk or I get tired, just like you, it's like it really comes out. It was like, where are you from? I'm like, oh fuck, here's the question. That means I'm either tired or drunk.
Yeah, it's funny. That part of it that you just articulated is actually what I'm best at for like languages or accents. Like I had to take, it's a class I took in college called speech and diction or something like that. And I was notorious in this class because it came so naturally to me that I would just phone it in. Like I would not pay attention to that class. So there's a bunch of us and it's like kind of dimly lit. So we would go around and everyone has to do like the sound or the A sound or whatever the fuck it is. We're doing like mostly British standard accents at the time because being an American, that's like what you're going to play on stage the most is like pretending to be British, Southern, or like Western, I guess is probably what would come
They're
up
the easiest,
most.
I guess, because it's very easy to lean into.
Yeah, like not too hard to lean into, but also just like there's a lot of stuff written about like those areas. But I would literally would lay my head down and like sleep like through the whole class, and then I would have the girl in front of me like tap me when it was almost my turn. I would wake up, say it perfectly, go right back to sleep. Like I don't know why, but something about just like looking at a word and kind of figuring out like, okay, that's what it is.
Wait,
like,
you had an accent class in high school?
yeah. Well, this is college.
Oh, college. Why though? Were you studying acting?
Yeah, so
okay.
I have a degree in theater acting and playwriting, and then a minor in screenwriting. So I just took a lot of classes, like in the general
So you
arts.
literally went to school to be in LA.
I didn't know at the time. So I'm 18 years old, and I'm living in Florida with the fam. As I grew up in Massachusetts, but then when I turned like 14, like right before high school age, my parents like, all right, cool, we're gonna sell the house and move everything. Like, oh, you have friends here? You got a girlfriend? I don't give a shit. We're moving, you know. So
Where did they move?
We moved to, I think initially it was Palm Harbor, Florida, but then mostly settled in Clearwater, Florida for like, I mean, I only lived there for 4 years. I lived there for high school, and I was like, all right, peace, I'm done, you know. But yeah, so at that age, and it's so funny to me thinking about myself at that age now, because people say this all the time, like you can't tell a 19-year-old to do anything, but you could not tell me to do anything, bro. Like I was like so focused on only what I wanted, and what I wanted at that time was 1, to get out of Florida, and 2, to be as close to New York as I could, because I thought that New York was where I would get what I want from acting. LA really wasn't even on my radar then. Like I didn't understand it all. Even like I think back to like being a kid and like the earliest times where I kind of like understood a little bit like, oh, I think I might like to act, or I think I might be interested in that type of stuff. I didn't associate that with Los Angeles until I was like, so I was 20 and I was graduating college 1 year early just because like I had AP credits coming in from high school, and I like worked my ass off to take a bunch of extra classes while I was there. And there's a class you have to take in your senior year called senior seminar. And in that class, now it's way different, thank God, because it was trash when I took it. But they basically give you some information about what you can expect once you like go into the industry, instead of like having to deal with the school, because it's very different.
Oh, it's like
totally
a functional thing. Like they actually want to make sure that you're prepared for what in fact the world entails, basically.
Yeah, like the business of it. And in that class, they couldn't tell me anything about LA, and that tweaked me out. I was like, hold on. There's 2 major markets where I can make money doing this for the rest of my life, and you can't tell me about one of them. Like, what do you mean you can't tell me?
What do you think that is?
I think it's just because New York is like very much, it's like a cult of association. I mean, LA is the same way, but it's really my belief now, having the experience of both places, that in New York, you have to kind of already be someone or be established to make it work there. LA, it does not matter who you are. You can come and make a life here if you want it. And yes, that is also true of New York, but not in the same way. Like, I think that there's like a hard edgeness to the East Coast that will eat you up and spit you out if you're not ready for it. Whereas a lot of people in LA can just coast, and they can just be comfortable in that. Which is dope. Like, it's nice.
But I feel like they won't get as far.
They won't. They won't.
Yeah. I feel like to get to a certain level, you really have to have the grind, like pretty much in your bones, or develop it in your bones.
Yeah. At the age, I like only understood like the next role, whatever the next role was. Cause like I said, I didn't spend more than like 3 or 4 months not on stage, you know? So I just had like a long period of time where all of my extraneous thoughts outside of school, which didn't take me a lot of mental capacity to deal with in the first place, was either women, video games, or like acting. Like that was it. I didn't have anything else at that age, you know? This is before parkour even. Like I was doing parkour a little bit at that age. Like parkour entered my life probably when I was like 16 or 17. I would say I started to like make more of an effort to like utilize the urban space in a way that I found interesting and engaging. But
so that was before you moved to LA?
I think the earliest I can think that I like actually pursued parkour would be when I was in Florida. So it would have been in high school. I was probably 16 or 17. I remember that's when I started to like engage with other YouTubers. Funnily enough, the first phone number I got for parkour, which only OGs will know this, but that's fine, is Danny Arroyo. Danny Arroyo is like one of the first like American like professional athletes, you know, like way back, like early WFPF days. And he just happened to post a video in Florida that was like down the street from my house at a park that I used to train at. And I was like, what? Like, that's so sick. And sure enough, I didn't meet him until like 7 years later, but it's just like the community was so small back then that it was not hard for you to kind of like see something and engage with someone about it. You know?
Yeah, I was training a lot with Jesse LaFleur.
Classic.
And he's from England, right?
Jesse is?
No. Daniel.
Oh, no. Danny Arroyo.
Oh, Danny Arroyo.
Danny Arroyo is, I believe, from Florida.
Wait. So I'm mixing him up with
Danny
somebody.
Labaca.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The legend, the GOAT.
I gotta. Yeah. Wait. So I gotta place a face to him. How about Danny Arroyo?
Spanish. He's shorter. He's probably like 5'8", 5'9". Now he has longer hair. But
I gotta look it up because I know
his early
I'm
years,
so
shorter
terrible
hair.
with names.
The dash bomb. He's the one who created the dash bomb. He would have been one of the early people to do the Tampa strides back in the day. Danny's a savage. Like Danny's a great.
Oh,
great athlete.
I see who it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I confused him with Labaca.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. Okay. First of all, I didn't know that you started way earlier.
Yeah. Well, I hesitate to even say start then. That's when it was like, it was in my awareness. And I always say this when I talk to people about parkour. I was a fan of the sport way before I was an athlete of the sport.
Yeah, I think all of us.
Yeah.
I think it takes a few years before you say, hey, maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
And the incremental nature of that sport is something that is not very clear to people, that people, even that they do the craziest shit, it's still like the professionals, it's still pretty measured. Like, they take risks, but they won't take the risk they're not at least 95% sure they can make.
Yeah.
Because that's just stupid. Like they actually incrementally got to that place where they feel comfortable on the roof, where they feel comfortable climbing this thing, comfortable doing that flip. And then they complete that extra 5% with faith.
Yeah.
But it has to have this 95% element first. Otherwise, you're simply not going to get very far in the sport.
Yeah.
You're just going to break everything very quickly. Which, by the way, I discovered in the first couple of years. I never fractured anything, and I did a lot of crazy shit. And in the first couple of years of parkour, I fractured my feet 3 times.
Damn.
Yeah. So and a couple of them were like retarded, like completely stupid.
Yeah.
Can I say retarded? I don't know. It was very stupid. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, one of many, is that this show, which is funny because right before we started, we kind of talked a little bit about like what the show is about. And I'm discovering it as I go. But the more I do it, the more it's clear to me that it's about people who devote themselves to something, either to, like a craft, or they really committed to something in a certain way, or a lifestyle, or whatever it is. Because that amount of attention on one thing creates a certain understanding of that thing.
Yeah.
And I'm all about understanding. I'm all about understanding the world and life a little bit better, and creating a little bit of understanding in other people what it requires to be successful at anything, right? So one of the reasons I want to talk to you is because your tenacity in parkour is one that I honestly have never seen before, truthfully, because for a very long time, you were mediocre minus.
Oh, yeah.
There was like, we started early on, and then it wouldn't improve, like for a very long time. And one of the things I always noticed is that, like, I would always follow you. You know, we weren't always communicating too much.
Sure,
so, I mean, we hung out and stuff like that, but we weren't like in constant contact. But I would always follow you, and I was like, oh, he's still doing parkour. Oh, he's still doing parkour. Oh, he's still doing parkour. And I was actually impressed by that. But again, it was like, it was good, but like, you know, it's not world class. And that's fine. And what was amazing to me, there was like a moment, and all of a sudden you started doing more.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I saw you doing rooftops.
Do you know when you think the moment was?
Oh, I wish I would. Maybe a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Like,
Something
like when I moved back to LA.
I'm not sure. I don't know. Okay. You know, I don't have the timeline that closely dialed in, but it was very obvious. So again, you know, like.
I would say I made like a serious turning point. I've had probably 2 or 3. 2014 was a big wall for me where I kept meeting pros and I was getting frustrated that I still sucked. And I appreciate your candor, by the way, because I was bad at the sport for like a long time.
It's not that let me just clarify this.
Yeah.
It's not about the sucking. It's the fact that, first of all, people have certain predispositions.
Sure.
Some people are just more naturally inclined to do a thing easier,
which
right?
I was not.
Corbin is just like an animal,
else.
Pasha, right? Like people are just like, what? Like you don't even understand what's going on, right? But very clearly they're just everything. Their air awareness, like everything is just like they're dialed into this, right? I belong much closer to your side of the camp. But like I have to work very hard. I have to work very hard to achieve things that it would take them like 2 hours to achieve, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't very clear to me that everybody can do anything. And people say that all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, I'm agnostic. Like, I don't know. Like, nobody ran the test on this, right? but I think you did.
Yeah.
I think that there's a certain element in the, like, you weren't, just like me, you weren't necessarily built for this, but you just kept on going. And I'm sure you're going to tell us now, like, what exactly you did in your mind that kind of changed it. Or maybe it was just like the amount of time that went by. I feel that it has this exponential component. And your case proves to me that no matter what it is, you stay in the game long enough, there will be this, there'll be this, all of a sudden, there'll be this exponential thing. It's just that I guess for some people, there's this, there's a plateau that for some people it's a little longer, but you just got to stay in the game if you're really serious about it. And eventually we'll start taking off. And now, honestly, the shit that you do, bro, respect.
Appreciate it.
Like that Kong from the roof into the thing that you kind of landed in between the mats. By the way, that was fucking gnarly.
Probably the sketchiest thing I've done in
that was so fucking gnarly. To anybody who's listening or obviously just kind of like hearing me say that, you Konged from a roof.
Probably 25, 30 foot drop.
25,
something like that.
Into a couple of triangle resin mats. What are they called? Resi mats, right? No, but they were like, they're still called resi mats, the triangles?
I think it's resi specifically because of like the material of foam that it is, as opposed to like the other ones that are like harder. Like they're meant to be soft.
Okay, so they're meant to be soft, but they were like, were they triangle shaped?
There were two of them. So the problem is that when I hit with my feet and it split them apart.
Split them apart, and your ass went right in between them, but it already broke your fall.
Oh yeah, I was fine.
Yeah.
Like that was the most comments I got on that was like, oh my god, so sketch. Are you okay? Blah blah. It's like, guys,
you could have easily not be okay. Like there was a few inches away. Listen, if your front feet would hit that front one earlier,
sure,
you would have landed on your ass without it being there,
which would have hurt. Yeah,
a lot.
Would have hurt.
Yeah. It would probably break your spine.
No, that one was cool, and it kind of like, I don't know. To go back to what I was saying, I feel like I've had like a couple like peaks and plateaus that I've had to push through to get to where I am as an athlete. The first one was 2014. Like I kept meeting pros and kept being in the same spot of like, I'm not getting any better. And this kind of like makes me feel like a loser almost to meet some of my heroes, you know, and to like have them have not the best impression of me, whereas I have an intimate understanding of who this person is, you know, and like what they've accomplished and what they're about. So 2014 was a little rough. I had to like make a pact with myself kind of like, hey, you're either going to really do this now or you're not doing this anymore. And it still took a long time after that, but that mental shift is what allowed me to kind of like I had a short period of time with acting and stuff where I was shy, and then I got over that real fucking quick. When I know what I'm capable of, I have no problem being myself in a space, you know. And I didn't have that for parkour until probably 2015 or 2016. Living in LA was probably the first time I ever experienced that. And
confidence when you go into the
confidence and the security to just be myself at wherever I am now. I don't experience that when I go to other places, and I've traveled a lot, you know, for parkour specifically. I've traveled a lot at this point. Been to 39 states and 8 countries. And I would say more than half of that is parkour specific. But LA, for some reason, has always been super accepting of me, regardless of skill level, has always like treated me like family in a way that's kind of like not true of other places, which is ironic given like the superficial nature of a place like this. But the people who are actually from here, or the people who are just kind of like in it for the community, like really have allowed me to be myself in a way that nowhere else has. And myself is loud and abrasive, and I'm going to say what goes, you know, and that doesn't always come off well. It's not always accepted well, especially if you come like with a megalomaniac like
megalomaniacal. It's a hard word.
Megalomaniacal. There you go. Which I feel like at that age, I probably like, I didn't really know what was going on. I just had like so much built up of being like a top student, of being like the head of like stagecraft, or being like the head actor in a show, that I'm used to like having to step up for my peers, that I started hosting events in PKLA when I saw there was kind of like a lapse in leadership, where there were people who had been doing it for a while, but they kind of like weren't getting as big numbers, or they're maybe more hobbyists than they were serious athletes. And I do think that that's one of the things about the sport that's like kind of, I feel uniquely positioned to speak about, because I think most athletes who have a platform in the sport are there because of their skills, period. You know, are there because they've been good and they have been good forever. There's no reason to ever call that into question for them. But for me, I have an intimate understanding of the sport, you know, like
the journey to become decent and good.
Not even just that, but also like like I can quote history about the sport from like 2006 onward, you know, like intimate understanding of the YouTube history of the sport, as well as like the history prior to that. So it's like my level of awareness and understanding of the sport is not necessarily met with my ability for the sport. And that kind of created a dissonance where I would meet people again who I was well aware who they were, and they had no fucking clue who I was and weren't really interested because I didn't make enough of an impression on them. So I feel like that's been a lot of my journey with parkour, that I didn't set out on this journey with that in mind, you know. Like I understood that for acting, I understood that's something I would have to come up with if I moved here, like that I would have to like deal with the cult of association and deal with only kind of getting whatever you're able to get in the room for, you know. But that was something with parkour I really didn't understand until 2017. I left LA. 2016, 2017, I left LA and like traveled around a lot. Went to Africa for a bit, went to like all these different spots. And I started lifting when I moved to Philadelphia, and that really shifted what I was able to do as an athlete. I had lifted before, but not like regularly, but that was the first time I had like a dedicated like lifting routine. And I must have added a foot or a foot and a half to my standing broad jump, and it just fundamentally changed the way I was able to move. Like a lot of how I experienced I would say my early to mid 20s was having the creativity and the vision to see like high level things in parkour, and just not having a body that could fulfill even 10% of what I was seeing, you know. And 2017 starting to lift really put me in a position where I would say it was closer to 50-50, where I could see stuff that like other people weren't looking at, and I could sometimes accomplish it. Whereas now I'm like 2 years into hosting this iteration of jams in LA, and skill level wise, I feel closer to like a professional athlete than I've ever felt in my life.
You really are. Like I'm looking at it objectively from the side and watching your journey from the beginning, and it definitely is getting very close, if not already at a level of a professional. I would say a couple more years you can probably go to like AOM and out of motion, right?
I mean, that's what my goal for, which is so funny because this has changed a lot too. I remember being 15 or 16 and wanted to be a WFPF pro athlete, you know, like that was like the pinnacle, that was the peak of what one could accomplish. And one of the things you have to be able to do in order to do that is you got to be able to do like a 14-foot standing backflip off of a box or some shit like that.
Really?
Which I still can't do, and I'm not doing.
That's an entry point?
It's ridiculous, you know, but it's like that's...
Wait, is that real?
I don't know if it's still real. I'm sure they've changed it, but that was like one of the metrics, you know, because of what they're trying to sell and what they want is they want big flips, they want big tricks, you know.
I see.
So I felt...
Yeah, it was something I remember David Bell was doing back in the day, and
yeah. Well, yeah, big stuff is definitely, you know.
And it just a quick riff on like what you said about the lifting. It really changes your identity as well.
Yeah,
like the second you get a little, like, even not necessarily even the way you look, even though that changes too, it's the what you can do with your body that changes your perception of who you are. Almost.
Yeah, which has felt nice, because again, I spent so much of the time being a fan of the sport first. I would say I was a fan of the sport from like 2005, 2006 until I start training more seriously once I go to college in 2010, 2011. But still, like, I mean, I'm learning basics, you know, like I really can't do a lot. I can only do flips in the gym. Like I literally didn't start doing flips outside until maybe 2017, 2018. And even then it's like really been more noticeable, I would say, in the last like 2 years, because I just didn't, I would do a flip and I wouldn't be able to stand up out of it. Like I didn't feel like my legs could like take the impact from it, you know? So it was like my experience watching all my peers do these challenges, and they're like, oh yeah, go do it, Jacob. And it's like, you have no idea what it feels like in my body to try and replicate this movement. Like, wow. It just wasn't happening. And ironically enough, I think it ties back into a lot of, which we'll get into this a little bit later, but everything I went through in 2019 with the schizophrenic break and like really just kind of like having my cosmos obliterated really, I think, reset me in a way, like across the board as an athlete, as a performer, as like all these different things in my life where I was maybe holding shame or regret or fear. I just no longer had room for it at all. And I legitimately believe I am lighter as an athlete now because of it, because I'm able to like go and try things more times than I would have before, or I'm able to like try something new in a way where I wouldn't have previously allowed myself to. Like it's really just helped me to one of the questions I got from one of my friends is like to talk about the mentality I have for training. And nowadays it's really, I just want to enjoy myself. Like I'm specifically looking for a feeling when I'm training. I'm not looking for a certain challenge. I'm not looking for like clicks or views or something like that. Because ironically enough, now when I focus on the things that like actually feel good, or the things that like I actually, hey, I want to get better at this, I'm going to work on that. That type of stuff is now starting to get like dramatically more engagement than I ever thought it would. And it's like, I'm just doing what I would already be doing, you know? So I think that's helped me a lot, because I used to go out and I would have like a goal for what I wanted for the day. And if you don't accomplish that, I feel like shit. Whereas now I still only am training once a week, unfortunately, just because I work so much. I'm not making a lot of time for it, but that one day a week, I'm there as a host, you know, like I'm there as like an elder male who's responsible for the enjoyment and safety of the other individuals, you know, and like, I think about it that way first, you know, like I am there to train, I am there to have a good time, and I am, you know, just one of the boys, but I'm there because in early 2020, a young man named Christian Storm killed himself because he was ostracized from the community. And I want to create a space that allows for people like that to still have a place to go if they can't like text people.
Was that in LA?
That was in LA. Yeah.
So actually, I want to ask you a couple.
Like you met Christian, probably you would have. I don't know if you remember him. Like you said, not good with faces, but he was.
No, I'm not good with
around
names. Yeah,
time.
if I see a face, I'll probably remember.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened there? Was he ostracized because of his behavior?
Yeah, it's like a combination of factors, and this is very interesting to me, just like as a male, you know, like we don't have responsibility to anyone outside of really ourselves and our family, you know, and our partner if we choose to have one. Like your friends.
And sometimes even that, like the family sometimes gives you this idea that because you're a male, you're on your own.
Yeah, I was told for most of my life that my dad moved out at 18, so I had nothing in my brain to think otherwise that I would have another option, you know. It's like, so I've been on my own since I was 18 and have been mentally on my own longer probably. But yeah, this was a kid who was someone I trained with a lot, you know, because we were at similar skill level at the time, and I didn't really understand, because I was probably 22 or 23. I didn't realize how much it was blurred between father figure and friend that I was kind of being for this kid. And I wasn't being a good father figure because I was like smoking weed with the kid, because it's fucking California and everyone smokes weed. And I didn't always feel great about that, you know? And then this is something I have a lot of dissonance with, where acting, always I had older friends. I was always with older friends. And now as a parkour athlete, I'm sometimes hanging out with kids that are 10 years younger than me, you know, that I really like have very little in common with besides the sport itself. So this was a kid who I kind of like, he really needed me or a father figure or someone in his life to help him work through these things. And unfortunately, they were just like a series of events that kind of made him ostracize himself both from me and starting to be from the other people who were here. And I was gone from LA when a lot of this was happening, so I'm hearing a lot of this secondhand. But there was an incident at Tempest where he got banned for life and he couldn't go back there.
From Tempest?
Yeah, and it didn't seem super, super major from what I was hearing. It did seem like something where it's like, hey, bud, we need to talk to you. Like, are you okay? You know, but it wasn't like a, hey, never come back here ever again, you know? Or at least...
What was it? Do you mind telling me?
I want to say it was something like he was playing with darts or knives or something. Like, he shouldn't have been doing it. You know? And I don't remember the entire story because I wasn't there, but he shouldn't have been doing it. But this is someone who had been paying to go to that gym for years, you know, for a long time. Like, this is an established member of the community. So it was just kind of unfortunate that a combination of that with him like making poor choices with his friendships and stuff just kind of slowly led him to having less and less people. And unfortunately, he was reaching out to me in very like cry for help type, like first like wanting to meet up and then being like belligerent and being like very angry and aggressive towards me. And that was like right when I was like either literally in the hospital or like within a month of getting out of the hospital. So I was just not in the mental space to like have to take care of someone who I like couldn't take care of myself, you know, like I was in a rough spot at the time. So then he goes dark after about a month or so, and then I hear from another friend, unfortunately, that he had killed himself. But for me, it's a way of like, I understand probably better than a lot of people do, just like having schizophrenia myself and having multiple experiences where I didn't want to be suicidal, but I had those thoughts and hallucinations kind of forced upon me just by the nature of my psychosis. But it's like I feel like a burden of pressure to like remember the cautionary tale of like when we take ourselves too seriously in a sport like this, that, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I kind of straddle the line between being known in the sport and no one having any fucking clue who I am. And that puts me in an interesting position where people who are respectful and good people fucking love me, you know, because they actually give me the chance regardless of my skill level, and I can just be who I am, which is a good person, you know, regardless of fucking people's opinions. If they don't like me, that's fine. But that, I don't know, I wasn't able to navigate that as well at that age, and just specifically because of my own circumstances, there was no way I was going to be able to really help him, you know, just given the month or two span of when that was going on for him. So the jams is a way for me to kind of like honor his memory and to remember like I am that kid, you know. If I didn't have something like this, I don't know where I would be, because I stopped going to auditions because I enjoyed parkour more. Like it became that comforting to me where like I gave up everything to move to LA, and I was putting that on hold just to go jump on a random bus stop with people that I don't know that well. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain like gravitas and energy to it that I feel is like really unfortunate if you're just going to remove that from someone's life, you know, without granting them like some type of outlet for it. So a big goal of mine now is working towards getting public parks built like all over Los Angeles County, because I don't want...
You mean just for that or in general?
Both. Like for me, it's a huge thing where like I want a park that has Christian Storm's name on it, period. You know, like I want his mom to be able to see that. Like that's really important to me. And I go back and forth between like allowing it to be a super, super burning passion, because I know it's like maybe a little bit unhealthy, because like this is me ultimately not being able to deal with grief, you know, and finding a creative outlet for it. But I find with a lot of circumstances in my life, and just kind of like what I understand from my experiences in general, is like my problems can be other people's solutions, or they can become other people's problems. And if you make your problems other people's problems, you're a shit human person, in my opinion. You know, like I don't fuck with people like that. But if you can find a way to make your shortcomings or your weaknesses or your things, like for me, I need to feel something like I'm the leader of the stagecraft, or I'm the boss, you know. It's an illusion, you know, but for me, it helps me stay focused. It helps me stay accountable. It helps me stay...
And it helps you express the good person. So a lot of people get drunk with power. You take power and you use it for good. You feel like you actually lead people in the direction that you feel is the best direction for everybody, all parts considered equal.
Like I try to, you know, like the way I describe it is like the Godfather quote, like I'm a wartime consigliere, because I am, you know. I started hosting events in the middle of the pandemic, and I got a lot of shit for it from some people in the community who just like were super, super pro-mask and like didn't think it was the right move or whatever. Those people didn't have the context of we just had that suicide within the last like 6 months. Before
and you felt like that was important enough.
I felt that was important enough where I was willing to like take anger from it, one, because I needed it. I as a person like needed to grieve that loss, and I knew there were other people in the community who likewise needed a space just to like see each other, you know, because that is a big thing to lose someone like that, you know, where we only know each other so well, but to have someone be completely gone is like, that's a lot, especially when you're in your early late 20s. Some people haven't experienced death that much by that point in time, you know. So it's like I felt a responsibility as someone who was fairly well versed in that to step up in a way that I understood was thankless, you know, like not like it made a lot of sense for the other people who were hosting events in LA not to do it anymore because it was no longer financially beneficial to them, or they moved or they didn't have time, whatever. I don't give a shit about that. I care about creating a space on Saturday where regardless of who you are or who you're friends with, you can come train. Period. And everyone will be respectful to you, because otherwise they'll have to fucking hear Jacob, because I don't tolerate what I see in a lot of other places, which is elitism, and which is kind of like, oh, you can't sit with us, like mean girl shit. Like, I don't care, bro, you know, like I will stick up for anyone that I have to. And I think that that is kind of like different energy than the base level of California vibing, enough where it's like, it allowed me to step up as a leader and say, hey, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. And other people were kind of like, oh, fuck, that sounds like a good idea. Actually, I'm down for that, in a way where like I probably wouldn't have blown up the same way if it was just like everything was hunky-dory and like good, because people would do other stuff. But like when the chips are against the table and they really don't know what to do and they're feeling lost and despondent, and some of them haven't worked for 18 months, you know, I gave a group of 15 to 30 people on a weekly basis something that they said they look forward to as the highlight of their week every week. And that felt awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it felt really cool to be able to provide that for myself, for other people, and to do that in the spirit of someone who I know needed it, you know.
There's something about the parkour community that really caters to that. I don't know what's going on in the parkour community now. I remember when I was still doing it. Again, I don't know, you're saying now there's some venues in which people have the mean girl syndrome. Back then, I remember, no matter who you were, at least in LA, you would show up and you would have this even ground.
Yeah.
And everybody would want to help everybody else. And it's more like a kind of like a wolf pack.
Yeah.
It very much like we help each other kind of thing, versus there were other adjacent sports like tricking, for example, which is like, to anybody who doesn't know, just like the people doing all those martial arts flips and all those crazy twists. It's a much more solo kind of sport. And when you would go to jam, you would feel that. It would have way more of that, which is like, this is the really good ones. This is the, you're a beginner. Like, there will be a division. In parkour, you didn't feel it as much. So you're saying that now that kind of creeps into parkour as well sometimes?
It's interesting. I would say like back in the day, and this is what I enjoyed about PKLA. And PKLA is really where I cut my chops, like hosting events, you know? It's where I got experience from it. It was someone else's events, but I kind of stepped in and like helped because I could see they needed it.
Who started it, by the way? I remember when
PKLA. I want to say his name is Joe Paloma, but I could be wrong, and there could be someone past that. Again, I'm not like a local. I came here in 2013 and was adopted as a local pretty quickly, but I only speak to like knowing so much about the community prior to me getting here, you know? But yeah, back in the day, I would agree. It was more kind of like, it was more about the experience and the feeling that you would get from going to a jam than about your participation in the jam. And now what I think is really interesting about the jams that we've been hosting for the last 2 years is that it has the energy of that, where everyone is welcome regardless of what's going on. But we have some of the best athletes in the world that come out every Saturday. And they're coming out with the intention of training with other elite athletes. And for a while, there was a good balance of like newcomers and elite athletes. And now it definitely feels like it's more skewed in the elite athletes, in terms of like the amount of people who are showing up. 80% of them are like straight bangers and could be competing, you know, but that's what they want to do on Saturday. They want to be around other like-minded individuals. So that was really the problem. But
how do they treat the ones that are not in that?
Now
80%?
they treat them well, you know, at least when I'm there. Because I am like, there's only been one event in the last 2 years, I would say, where that didn't happen. And it wasn't my event. I like let someone else like take over Saturday for the day. And there was a lot of people who like were just standing around, not saying hello to each other. Like, and that's fine. You can do that wherever the fuck you want in the rest of the country. I don't care. You do how you want it. In Los Angeles, if you're here on a Saturday, you are respectful to the people at that jam, period. You shake their hands, you say hello, you help them film if you need to. Like, there's like a level of like Disney World that I want people to experience here because of the vision that I see long-term for what we could do here that I just don't think you can do in other places. Or rather that you would have to like build the foundation there. Whereas now I think it literally takes a voice like mine to be willing to say, hey, actually, this is how we do it here, period. And to be willing to take that punishment from other big name athletes who come to town and, oh, fuck Jacob, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't care, because the people who are here and enough people from outside of here see the value of what I'm trying to accomplish and support it, that it doesn't really matter to me that I have some dissenting opinions on how I go about doing it. Like, I'm open to hearing it, but for the most part, I make decisions, like you said before, like that are based on what does the group need? And what the group needs is a structured amount of time where they won't be kicked out to do the thing that they want to do with their friends, which during the pandemic meant we were very specific about where we were going. We were pretty much just going to UCLA and downtown, and that was it, because we wouldn't get kicked out. And if I'm having to deal with, you know, herding around 20 or 30 people, I can't just train the same way that I would in a car with 4 people, you know, like it's a very different mindset. So it's just kind of been finding a balance between like, what does the existing community here actually need? What can I do to serve them? How does it benefit me and what I'm trying to do, which it really has. Like as an athlete, I feel like I've progressed so much, like a noticeable amount in the last.
Well, I feel like the
years.
responsibility and the feeling that you're actually doing something for others in a real way puts a different emphasis on how you feel inside the sport.
Yeah.
It's almost like the sport now has a seat for you.
Yeah.
It has a place that is more than just I'm showing up to train.
Yeah.
So then there's a more serious attitude towards what the sport really is, even though you have a very deep understanding of what it is. Now it's a different thing because now you're helping the sport evolve, or the community evolve, which allows the sport to evolve because the attitude around the community and then around the way that it's done directly contributes to how people feel, and that directly contributes to how much they get to train, how much they get better, yada 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 yada.
Yeah.
So let's touch a little bit upon because you mentioned the schizophrenic outbreak. First of all, is this something that you had from back in the day and it just comes out every few years, or this was like the first ever?
So it's chronic as far as I'm aware. So far as I'm aware, I've always had it. I did a lot of work in 2019 actually writing about my experience with it, or like delving into past memories and like trying to kind of like suss together like, okay, where did this kind of start? Or I remember my sister asked me after I got out of the hospital kind of like where, if I still feel like I am, or kind of like where I begin and where it ends type of thing. And I really like, as I get older, and just to define it for the audience, because I think it's like a confusing one a lot of times.
It is a very confusing one. I'll tell you my main confusion around it, and you can correct me. My main confusion around it is always those terms of psychosis and schizophrenia. Because from what I understand, this is where I'm going to say mine, and then you're going to correct me, right? Yeah. From what I understand, schizophrenia is it's very broad.
Yeah.
But the majority of it is essentially either you hallucinate either sounds or visuals or both, and you're convinced they're real, they're outside of you, and it's many times it's accompanied by paranoia, right? Like you think people are following you, things like that,
or delusions,
delusions of grandeur, whatever, right? And psychosis, it's a harder one to define for me, but from what I kind of gather so far in my life, it's a state in which you simply have no control over your actions. Like it's just an outburst of action without a coupling of like understanding why you're doing it, and sometimes you can't even stop yourself. And right, so would that be like a fair?
Yeah, I would say that's actually like a pretty good way of thinking about it. The way that I always like, the thing that I've heard that I enjoy the most for it is that it affects your ability to like basically tell the difference between what I'm experiencing now and what I already have experienced. It's hard for me to.
So it's a temporal problem?
Yeah, it's hard for me to temporarily like. So this is why I don't always talk about it, because sometimes if I'm telling you the story of the schizophrenic break in 2019, I intellectually, Jacob, can understand that I'm not there naked in that elevator going through what I went through, you know, but internally and emotionally, my body has no clue that I'm not there right now.
So you can actually be there fully.
Yeah. In a way where it's like, obviously that helps with acting, you know, like I didn't know that that's why I was like good at it.
Full method.
Yeah, because I don't have a choice, you know, because my brain doesn't have the same kiddie bumpers that other people's bowling lanes do, you know. Like mine, the other way that I like to describe it is that it affects one's ability to form cohesive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, you know. So like you said before, like the psychosis part, things are happening and you are not driving that ship, you know, like.
So usually they express themselves together?
What do you mean?
So like there's more psychotic episodes to people who suffer from schizophrenia?
I mean, psychosis in general varies, you know, like there's a number of different ways that someone can have a psychotic episode. But specifically for schizophrenia, what happens when I've had a psychotic episode, which as far as I know, I've had two that are not drug induced, and I've had probably, I would say 4 total that are like partially drug induced.
And the ones that are not drug induced, what usually triggers it? Stress, pressure, lack of sleep? After
the last one, I figured out the warning signs are, I mean, unfortunately, it's women is a big one for me. Like stress around relationships is normally like a huge indicator of when I'm going to have one. If I And then if I haven't slept in excess of 3 days, I need to like really be careful then. The longest I've gone, I believe, is 7. I've done that twice and it's fucked up. Like it's not good.
Wait, 7 what?
7 days without like
Sleep?
a proper REM cycle. Like not good, you know.
That's what
really
happens when you go into psychotic break?
Yes, that's what's happened to me twice.
So you also can't sleep basically.
You lose
You
the
just become
ability.
manic and you just can't. Wow.
Yeah, it's rough. And then the other one is
So it exacerbates
eating.
itself basically.
It makes it worse, and
Yeah.
it gets very hard to get out of. And the other one is eating. If I literally forget that I have to eat every day, and then it's like, okay, Jacob, it's been 2 days and you haven't fed yourself.
So that happens.
That happens, yeah.
Holy
Yeah,
shit.
so it's like if
Not because like because there was a period and you said that you were really down on your luck and you
Yeah,
couldn't even
yeah.
feed yourself, but you're not saying that. You're saying forget to eat.
forgot that I have to eat every day. You know, like literally, like it gets that bad where it's like I think of myself as a very intelligent person. You know, like I've been on my own for a long time. I can figure out my shit. But in the depths of a schizophrenic break, you are not making decisions from a rational place. You're not making decisions from anything other than like I guess probably your amygdala, you know, like pure raw emotion and impulse. And yeah, so that's the behavior parts. Like you're gonna make decisions that like don't make a lot of sense to you or the people around you. Your thoughts are completely disorganized, you know, in a way that can be really crippling. That's probably the part that I experience the most on a day-to-day basis. I don't experience auditory and visual hallucinations on a regular basis. That's only like when it's really, really bad. But I would say that like thought disorganization patterns happens to me on a daily basis.
How is this different? I'm actually asking. I don't,
Yeah.
not challenging it. I just don't know the difference. How does this differ from just like really, really severe ADHD? Like you just can't. Is it similar or?
I don't like, and this is the thing is I've only been diagnosed as a schizophrenic like when I like got admitted to the hospital most recently, you know, like I kind of just like assumed prior to that. And I'm sure if I spoke to a doctor who like addressed me for ADHD or something like that, I'm sure I would tick a couple of the boxes where it'd make it. And I've had other people who have like self-diagnosed me as like, oh, I think you're bipolar. I think of this. And it's like, yeah, honey, well, I have fucking auditory hallucinations as well, you know? So pretty sure schizophrenia is also
I actually
one of the
heard
boxes,
this research a couple of years ago where they talked about this temporal thing where it's only recently that they discovered, recently in terms of like how long it takes to do research, recently discovered that it's a temporal problem where they think, I actually have a different take on it, but I mean, for my own reasons, but the experts think that it's almost like a short circuit in the brain that's responsible for perceiving where you are in time.
Yeah.
And what happens with hallucinations is that essentially those are thoughts or patterns like auditory or visual that are decoupled from your present moment. So you experience them as if they're external because they exist in a lag. It's almost like an echo, like that happens like before or after, which I found very fascinating.
It's gnarly.
So would you say that sounds close to what you experience when that happens, or there's no way from knowing from a first person experience that that's what's happening?
I would say that's accurate of the last one I had. The first time it happened to me, I was 15 years old. And I had no clue what was happening. Had no idea at all.
So let me ask you a couple of leading questions just so it's clear for me and for the audience.
Yeah.
First of all, the voices, do they have an identity? Is this like you speaking or somebody else and it's a voice of like a female, male, or you can't really make that distinction?
I would say it's somewhere in between. So I had a shrooms trip once where I was like definitively getting like a set of rules or commandments from the shrooms, you know.
But that happens on shrooms to me too.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to that. It's very similar to that, where you're kind of hearing like your Jiminy Cricket. You're kind of hearing like a voice in your head. You know? Just the voice in your head, unfortunately, is telling you to flay your fingers and to cut your penis off and to smash your head through the glass window.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It gets pretty gnarly.
And that happens to you happened to you on mushrooms?
That hasn't happened to me on mushrooms.
Okay.
The calm, like, hey, you need to set up rules around when you can smoke marijuana. That's what happened to me on mushrooms.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
The delusional auditory hallucinations that were like demonic in nature, that's only happened to me pretty much just the one schizophrenic break. I've had shroom trips that have gone pretty gnarly that are like in a similar vein that I think actually like helped me prepare for it, oddly enough. Like I think I survived that schizophrenic break 100% because I had done acid.
Because you had mild experiences with it before.
Yeah. And again, the first time I ever did, I was 15. I think the most I had done drug wise is I had like a glass of wine at my communion and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like really did not have any of that prior, but was just someone who was deeply, deeply depressed. This is a year after moving to Florida. I don't know anyone, like I haven't made a lot of friends yet. I'm only slowly getting into theater and like finding sort of an identity for myself besides video games. And I didn't really have like a body to be proud of at that time or other things to hang my hat on, and I'm 15 and there's a girl I really like, cause it always is that. And there's a point of contention where it's not really working out and we're kind of like blurring the lines between friendship and not friendship. And historically I have trouble with that. I really struggle with between like, I can either just flirt with girls and that's it. It's very easy for me to do that. But if it's one where I'm like, oh fuck, I like really like this girl actually, like I could see myself spending non-sexual time with this person and enjoying myself, I normally fuck those up. Like I normally get so in my head about it, and a normal person does this, but a person with schizophrenia, it's like you have no clue like how wound up I can get and how like strange my behavior will seem to someone else when it's like I won't even necessarily realize I am doing it until it's a little bit too late. And as I'm older, it's a lot easier for me. But at 15, I had no clue. I just show up to school one day and I'm literally like catatonic and I can't look people in the eye and I'm not really speaking very loud to people, and I'm having a tough time remembering if we're cool with each other or if you fucking hate me right now and I can't talk to you. Like I wasn't able to have a distinct understanding of where I was in temporal space, like I couldn't be positive that the relationships and people around me could be trusted in a way that I thought they could the day prior.
That's the paranoia, I guess, kind of like seeping in.
Yeah.
Where's the I in this whole picture? So like that signature we call I, the things is identification of the me versus the world, right? The ego, whatever you want to call it. And you might not be able to answer that because it might be you might be too discombobulated. Like you can be completely confused. Yeah. So I don't know, but like I'm asking, can you tell us like how does it feel? How does the I feel when you're in that complete, like for example, the voices telling you like some demonic shit, right? It's telling you like, cut this off or cut that off.
Yeah.
Is it convincing in a way of like, oh, I should do that then? Is it?
I would say, so 15, I didn't know. I didn't have enough information to know what was going on with me to be able to like have a real grasp on it. I was just along for the ride, like that one was probably like 7 days, whereas like my parents had no clue. I would like come home, have dinner, not say a fucking word, go to my room, like sit by the edge of the pool with weights strapped to my legs, thinking about killing myself, like really like dark place, but no rational understanding of it, But the one where I'm 27 is completely different, and it's like a experience on a magnitude that like I can only equate it to like fucking Naruto and shit like that, like opening all your chakra gates, like that is what I experienced, like I experienced my pineal gland opening and like literally being forced to my knees, weeping with gratitude just for how the sun felt on my skin, like a level of like humility that I think most people, if they do experience it, it's because of like tremendous loss or something like that, and they're not coming into it grateful, and that is the one thing I will say about the experience when I was 27 is I found a way when I was hearing those voices to say internally, fuck that, man, I love my life, this is gnarly, this is the most fucked up week I will ever experience in my life, but I love my life actually, I have so many people in my life that care about me, and I don't think I really understood that before. I knew I had good friendships, and I knew that I had like people that I cared about myself, but until the schizophrenic break, and unfortunately I have my phone during that whole experience, so that whole week my friends and family are getting a lot of weird fucking things, where they're like, what is going on with him right now, like
they didn't know you were in a hospital?
They had no clue. Well, I didn't have my phone when I was in the hospital. This is the lead up, so that schizophrenic break takes about a week, and it ends with me like being carted out of a fucking public elevator naked as fuck, like having a seizure, you know. It's probably in that elevator for like 2 or 3 hours. And then they take me out, they take me to a hospital. I have to deal with that. And then we get to go back to my apartment and like check some of my stuff. But my roommates at the time were like, no, you need to go to the cops. You need to go to the cops. My mom's like, all right, you can't take a nap. I'm real sorry. You got to go to the cops. And so we go sit with the cops. I'm explaining to them the whole story, which is always fun when you're talking to the cops. And then they're like, all right, we need you to stand up. You're not under arrest. Click, click. You're not under arrest, you know, but they're like putting me in handcuffs and leading me into like a holding room or whatever. And are basically like just repeating like, you're not under arrest, you're not under arrest. While I'm like, you know, technically the schizophrenic break is over at this point, but not by much. You know, we're talking about a couple hours since I've been like, feet are back on the ground now, you know. And, you know, sure enough, they put me in the back of the cop car and we drive out to like Cerritos, I think. So it's like 2-hour drive. And then I'm just in a mental hospital for the next 3 days. And I didn't know I was about to go to one, you know, like I had very little information or understanding that that was about to occur. But yeah, during the experience itself, it's like you said before, of like mania. So I'm experiencing like the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. Like I really wouldn't, I don't know, I wouldn't trade it, because I'm thankful in a way to have an intimate understanding of what my worst day actually looks like, and to know what I did with that, you know, like what that did to me and how I chose to flip it and what I chose to do from it, which I think, if nothing else, says a lot about me as a person for myself, you know, regardless of other people's opinions about it. Like, I was able to go through something that objectively would break other people, you know, that like other people don't walk away from, that they end up on the streets from, or that they end up never needing to accomplish anything after that. And I'm able to like, to know in my heart that that's a story that like I'll be telling for the rest of my life, and it'll make a difference for people for the rest of my life, even though it's gnarly for me to have to go back to it, even though it's gnarly for me to like actually sit with it and experience it, because I have a photographic memory, so I fucking remember it, you know, like in excruciating detail, that the people who are listening to the story will never have to experience it the way that I do every fucking time I talk about it, you know. But I know enough now that I didn't tell. There was one person in my life that knew I potentially had schizophrenia from age 15 to 27 when it happened. One, including my parents, including a bunch of people in my life. No one had any clue, you know, because I didn't understand how to talk about it. I didn't know what schizophrenia was until 2 years after my first one. I had AP psychology in high school, and we were learning about it, and I was like, oh fuck, that sounds really familiar, actually, you know, maybe I should look more into this. But it's one of those things where like, maybe you're just a hypochondriac, you know, you don't really know what you're looking into. But yeah, the second one, there was no way around it. It's like, I actually had to confront it in a way that like, I had hundreds of people, like probably closer to 400 or 500 people reach out to me in a way where it's like, I did not think that there were this many people that I was connected to that gave a shit about me, you know. Like, I knew I had made impressions with people, I knew that I like had friendships, but I didn't realize there were that many people who like actually it mattered to them whether or not I was alive right now, you know. In a way that like, I definitely think helped me get through it. I don't think it's really good for someone who's going through that to have access to a cell phone, honestly. In an ideal world, you know, they just like have their friends and family that can kind of sit and ride it out with them. But I'm an adult who, you know, is responsible for myself. So I spent most of that time by myself, you know, kind of just like pinballing against the wall. Like, there's a really weird like Christ complex part of that break in particular, where I literally like, I went around, I bought like a bunch of bananas and water and like walked around to strangers and just like gave it to them and just like asked them about their day. Like, while I'm like tripping, dude, you know, like really like bugging. But that was part of one of the worst days of the break, was right before that. And so to me, the next day was like, what am I going to do today? Today is not about me. Today is about other people, you know? And I spent most of that like sixth day of the schizophrenic break just trying to like ignore, like, hey bro, it's been like 5.5 days since you've had normal sleep and you're not really eating very much, you know? But I still tried to like keep like an upbeat, you know, mentality about it in a way that like, I really think I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have that. I don't know where I got that, you know, that specific mentality of like the positive perseverance. I know where I got the negative perseverance or the like willing to like destroy myself and like struggle through anything. I've had that almost as long as I can remember, you know. Like that was one of the things when I was writing the book, is like it helped me understand like, oh fuck, like I've actually had these tendencies for a long time, like 6 to 8, you know, like so it's been interesting for me to like I speak like someone who has an intimate understanding of themselves, and I feel like someone who has an intimate understanding of myself, you know, but I didn't know how to articulate to that on a public scale with something like schizophrenia until it was forced upon me, you know, and I didn't really have a choice other than to talk about it. And it's still like, I'll get like an agent that I had in the last year or so, like told me, he was like, yeah, you like should not tell people about this. Like you can tell your close friends about it and that's fine, but you really should keep to yourself besides that. And I understand that argument and I hear it, but I know for myself where I'm at right now that it does not benefit me to hide that type of shit. It might to like have an air of mystery, or, you know, to kind of be cautious about when I tell it or how often I delve into it, you know, because sometimes I think you give other people power over you when you give out your story. But with something like this, it's like, I dare someone to come up and like talk to me about parts of that story and try and make me feel lesser than. It's like, you have no clue, bro. Like you have no clue how close to being atomized I was, and to walk out of that with a fucking smile. It's like, you can't break a person who has that type of like stomach, you know? And that was probably like the one thing that like I'm like eternally grateful for that experience. I regularly refer to that week as the best week of my life, because it will never be that bad ever again. You know, like I would have to make a conscious choice to ever let my life get like that again, and I won't, you know. So
what do you feel the difference is between what we experience in psychedelics and like a schizophrenic outbreak? Is it in tone, or is it in content, or both? So it's just like negative versus
really
positive.
Similar. It's really similar in a way where it's like, I had a really negative experience with my father when he came out so my mother comes out and visits me like during it, you know, like literally like before.
While you're in the hospital?
Like before I'm even in the hospital.
Okay.
Like literally I like tell her that like the breakup happens or whatever, and that's like the start of the schizophrenic break. She's already booked a flight to California, never been to fucking California before, already coming to help, you know. My father comes a month after, and he comes because I find out later he has business that he's able to come so he can write off the trip. He wasn't coming to visit his son, you know, he had another agenda. But that one of the things he came to tell me was, you did this to yourself. Essentially, that was the moral of his story, you know. And one of the things he brought up was that, oh, you know, my doctor was telling me that, you know, schizophrenic breaks are actually brought on by psychedelic experiences. And I flipped, bro. I lost my shit, because I realized that's what I was getting was you did it to yourself, you know, instead of like you have no fucking clue what I just went through, bro. You know, like, and I just finished explaining to him too, like that I experienced like full blown, like hearing demonic voices, like say all the shit I was mentioning to you before. And to be able to walk through that experience alive, and to be able to say, no, I love my life actually, genuinely, you know, is one of the proudest moments I've ever had, you know, to be able to actually admit that without saying it like it's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be able to articulate that to a parent, and for that to fall on deaf ears, I snapped. I lost it. And I started explaining to him, I was like, yeah, I did know that actually when I learned it when I was 17 years old, 2 years after I had already experienced it. It's like, you can't tell me that I'm doing this to myself, because I had this experience prior to ever ingesting drugs, you know, years before I ever smoked weed, years before I ever like tripped or anything like that, you know, even alcohol. I wasn't really drinking at the time, you know? So for me, it's like, they are very similar insofar as like, so you do shrooms, you do acid, and you get an 8 to 12 hour time period where your behavior and your decision making is going to be different.
Those gates are open, so to speak.
Yeah, you're more receptive to kind of whatever the vibe is, whatever the experience is, and you're less judgmental about something being a horrible idea and doing it anyways, you know. And I would say the only difference with schizophrenia specifically is there's a level of like comfort with shrooms and with acid that like, you know, it's temporary. Like, you know, like, okay, this is long, 8 to 12 hours is a long time, but there is, you know, a light at the end of the tunnel. I will get through this. You are not experiencing that while you're on a schizophrenic break. What you are experiencing is, I don't know if I'm going to survive this actually. Like it's
because it's naturally occurring, quote unquote. It's just my brain now.
It's just
and you're aware of that.
It's just my brain.
That's actually a question. What I just asked you was it was a leading question to that. I actually wanted to ask you: do you feel that it's possible that if you would have a frame, let's play a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's not in your head. Let's say this is real space that your brain just opens up to. Okay, the good and the bad. Do you think that knowing that it's just a gate that opens and closes, knowing that you have a potential to just close it, do you think it would help or make it worse in a schizophrenic outbreak?
I think unfortunately it's a train that the brakes have been cut. You know,
say it again.
It's a train where the brakes have been cut from the train. So it's like it'll stop eventually.
You don't know when. You don't know where.
When or
it might fly off a bridge.
Yeah. It might just come to a slow stop. You know, and it might be totally fine. It may hit something, and that's what causes it to stop.
And because you didn't ingest a substance, you don't know. It doesn't have a time limit.
Yeah.
You're on your own. Like you have no idea.
I always joke that a schizophrenic break isn't a picnic. You can't plan accordingly. You know, like you have no clue what it's going to be brought up, what you're going to experience. Like it really is. I've had bad trips. I don't like calling them that because I think that that's just people who are like not willing to accept a certain amount of like suffering for their actions, you know, because sometimes that's what happened. You got the wrong species of shroom, you're going to experience terror for the next 8 hours, baby, you know, like that has its place and its time. But the actual like I felt like I was going to die, you know, like, and a lot of my like friends and family, like me going dark for those 3 days or whatever in the hospital, had no clue if I survived that ordeal or not. They had no clue. So myself and a lot of my peers experienced like a near death experience for me, you know, where it's like, one, I feel way different as a person after that type of thing. But two, it's like, I really didn't know how that was going to end. I had no clue, you know, and especially like there are parts of it where it's pretty tame or it's like, wow, Jacob, that's really strange. But to the end of it, where again, I'm in a public fucking elevator naked.
How did that happen right away?
I was tripping out, bro.
No, you don't remember how you got there?
No, I remember in vivid detail all 7 days of the fucking.
You don't want to get back there. I get it. Okay.
No, it's like I don't mind getting into parts of it, but like that's towards the end of the delusion, and it's like really all sense and decision making is gone at that point, and I'm like pure instinct. Like there are parts of the experience where the way I described it is like, the tattoos is a good example because like I never had tattoos until I was on a schizophrenic break and I decided it was time to get tattoos, you know, like literally like went in.
I mean, that's a small one still. But
yeah. For me, it's a binary, and I'll get into that in a second. But I went in while I was on, I believe, day 4 or 5 of the schizophrenic break when I like go in to like set the meeting or whatever, and it's a full house, you know, it's the middle of the fucking day on a Thursday or some shit, and it's like I'm coming in hot, you know, I'm coming in like there's no way not to be aware that I'm in the room. It's not possible if you're not to see this motherfucker tweaking, you know, and I'm being there, I'm being respectful, but I'm very much like just like burning, like on fire, you know, like just to be in there. And I have to like keep apologizing to people because I'm going so fast, it's hard for me to connect. So I have to keep asking like, what was your name again? Like, remind me your name, you know, like really like needed them to be.
You're like on speed and all the psychedelics together.
Yeah. And it's like, no, they had no clue, you know, like, and props to those people. Oh my God, for them not calling the cops on me, like props to those people. But so I go through like another day of the schizophrenic break or whatever, and I go through a whole work day. I worked 2 full shifts during a schizophrenic break.
Holy shit.
It's fucked up.
Doing what?
Instacart at the time. So yeah, so shopping for other people's fucking groceries.
That explains a lot about how late they are to certain things.
Yeah, no, it was.
It's just a regular thing. They have a bunch of people
are phoning it in. Yeah, but so I go through that, and then literally after the workday is done, I have the meeting to like get my tattoos done, and I'm totally placid during that. Totally placid. My mom is fucking there with me getting the tattoos. Like the work experience was pretty gnarly and out there, and that was not great. But I was calm and normal again when I was getting the tattoos. Within an hour and a half from that, I've stripped all my clothes and I'm walking towards the subway, convinced that I'm going to get to the airport before this girl leaves the airport, you know.
Why naked though? What's the instinct?
I had all of my clothes besides my shoes when I left the house. I'm pretty sure I didn't have shoes when I left the house, but I had all my clothes when I left the house, you know. But then I'm getting closer to the metro, and I experience like so remember, I'm a dragon. You know, that's what I'm experiencing. Is I'm a fucking dragon, and I'm telling you,
dragons don't wear clothes, man.
It's nuts, bro. But that's kind of what it was. You know, it's like I was getting closer and closer to the destination. I was realizing you're not gonna get all the way to the airport, bro. It's not gonna happen. So it's like a combination of kind of like actually losing it, you know. And I had a moment where I like purged, basically, where I was like freaking out, was tweaking out, and then I just fell on the side of the road and started vomiting. Like I don't know what I was even vomiting because I hadn't been eating, you know. But it was like really like expelling all of that energy, and then afterwards felt way lighter. And again, I'm still hearing these fucking voices that whole time or whatever, and for whatever reason it like it was like that primal instinct of like, why do I need these? Like, what is this doing for me right now in this situation, you know? And I think that part's hilarious because it's like I'm in like the peak of psychosis. I'm within 2 hours away from like literally they have to like take me out of this fucking elevator because I was having a seizure, bro. You know, I was tweaking. And even during that,
was the elevator going to the metro?
Yeah, up and down on the metro for probably 2 hours, you know, where people would hit it and like expect to get in and like would not expect to see this naked fucking bald dude just tripping out.
I was like, now that you're okay, it's really funny.
No, I know, I'm aware. But I joke about this all the time where I'm like, I'm gonna be just sitting on the subway somewhere, or I'm gonna be like having a sandwich somewhere, and someone's gonna be like, it's like kind of eyeballing me like a little bit.
It'd be awesome if you meet someone from high school. You know, like they didn't see you until that point.
Yeah, but I always joke, I'm like, they're just gonna be looking at me, and then they'll be like, it's you, it's the naked guy, you know, like they're gonna remember from that, which of course is never gonna happen. But during that, like before I even get to the elevator, there's a moment where I'm like freshly naked and there's like a light post, and I like hide behind the light post, and I'm kind of like giggling to myself, and it's like, bro, like you are out here, man, like you're tripping in a way that like, because again,
wait, nobody called the cops?
Like, that's what I'm saying. This whole experience, I don't have a record for this. Like, I don't have a bill from this. I have no clue how I got. I have no clue how I got through this circumstance without being fucking shot or having a crazy bill from it. You know, like I have no clue. Absolutely no clue.
Demons were talking to you, but angels were protecting you, man.
I guess they were. You know, I guess they were. I got very, very lucky with like the treatment of like the medical professionals and the cops. And I think it was just a testament to the energy I was putting out. The energy I was putting out was chaotic, but it was also like Christ-like, you know, like it was very much like, I'm here for you, period. You know, what do you need? Even though it's like bugging.
Nothing, bro. I'm good.
I'm good. Get some water. Like, you know? But that's where I was at. I was in that like kind of like delusional, like, needed to make life about something other than myself because it was the only way I was going to survive. You know? So it's pretty rough. Like I would definitely say that's the significant difference though between experiencing a schizophrenic break and a psychedelic trip is like there's more room for enjoyment in a trip. I would say.
You know, you did something to achieve this in psychedelic case.
Sure.
In other cases, you just like in the other case, you just like, I don't fucking know what's going on. I don't know when it's going to end. It's just terrifying.
It is terrifying. Unless
you lose it yourself completely. One final question on that. Just out of curiosity, what kind of visual hallucinations did you ever see?
Didn't really have visual very much. Auditory was pretty intense for me. But yeah, visual really didn't occur much. Like I've had that on like shrooms before. I've seen fractals and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I always wonder because like when you look at a movie like Beautiful Mind, right?
Sure.
Like I always wonder.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah. And it's a real story. But the question is, do they experience it like that, which is like real people just straight up there? Or is it more like psychedelics, which is more like fractal, like animated kind of thing? I would say you never had it, but like I wonder what it's like when you actually have that full on.
I would say it's probably closer to. It's like you're getting suggestions from the universe and from the world that you maybe wouldn't notice like normally, you know, or you wouldn't accept them as suggestions. But yeah, straight up visual hallucinations are pretty rare as far as I understand, like in general for people with schizophrenia. Like auditory is really the one that's
the main one.
Way more common. Like, yeah, like I have seen fractals on shrooms before, and doing changa in Mexico is kind of like a similar.
Changa is a few forms of
extract.
DMT, right?
Yeah, that's like the closest to like actual DMT I've done. I haven't done like proper.
You haven't
DMT.
done proper DMT.
Yeah, not yet.
And you okay? Are you open to it, or is this something?
I'm open to it. It's on the list.
Okay, on the list is good. No, I don't know what's the recommendation with the schizophrenia.
Yeah, no, that's actually on that point. That is kind of like I'm at a different point in my life now. And we talked about this briefly before. Like 2016, I kind of am at like a low point, and I'm like really like I'm hitting a wall where I'm booking a lot of acting work, but I'm not making any money, and I'm not really feeling fulfilled anymore when I'm doing it. And I had a trip that kind of like it forced me into this like supreme state of humility, and I walked.
Wait, is that the one with, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but is that the one with the acid that you were telling me that you were walking around? Okay.
Yeah. So on that trip, I walked.
Tell everybody what the trip was, though, before you tell us what the trip was. Like, because you went around downtown for like, I don't know.
I walked around 18 miles in sandals, bro. Like, this is what I mean. Is like,
that's also Jesus. Like,
I'm a strange
from
person.
Nazareth with sandals.
Yeah, but this is what I'm learning about myself. Is like I didn't notice those types of things when I was in my early 20s as like hey bro, you probably have schizophrenia and a Christ complex. You know what I mean? I didn't know. I was just kind of like doing what felt natural to me, and what felt natural to me on that day was I watched a movie that was giggly and I was having a good time, whatever. And I watched a second movie, and then halfway through I was like, I should make a werewolf transformation. And like, got really like into the physicality of the werewolf transformation. And I was looking in the mirror and then kind of like had this experience of like, what would it be like if I like left home and came back as a different person, And I got really fixated on that idea. And so I did. I left the house with nothing in my pockets. Like I literally like dug a hole outside of the apartment and like put my keys in it type shit, Because I was like, I didn't know where else to put them. And I walked around for about 18 miles total. And I believe this is right before they broke down the 4th Street Bridge or the 6th Street Bridge, whichever one is, they're still doing construction on. This is right before they took it down. So part of me like really wanted to go and walk it before they did, And so that experience was interesting because I kind of just like normally when I do psychedelics, I'm embarking on some type of a pilgrimage. Like I don't know where the destination is, but I'm specifically undertaking the journey because I know it'll force me to confront something that I am otherwise ignoring, like that's one of my favorite parts about it. And I do kind of feel like I don't need that anymore, after being forced into it by the schizophrenic break. It's like I've already experienced a level of humility that most people will never have to experience. So certainly there's more things I can learn from trips, but in my trips since then, which I've probably only done like shrooms maybe like twice since then, I haven't done acid since in 2018 or 2019, I had a seizure while doing acid, and that kind of turned me off to it.
Yeah, acid is a tricky one, especially with things like schizophrenia and paranoia and things like that, because acid really is a slingshot.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are a little bit more measured. Yeah. A little bit.
If it's the right species, I'll do mushrooms again. Like if I can get penis envies, those are the best. I don't care about people making fun of it. Those are the best shrooms. Those are great. Every time I have those, it's a light and warming experience, but I'm kind of done with like you're going to experience terror shrooms because it's like, why am I just going to jumpstart a minor schizophrenic break for myself? Like I already know what that's like. I already know how to internalize it in a way where it's useful to me, but it doesn't really benefit me to keep going back to it, But so yeah, now I'm at a point kind of where like I always have viewed drugs as like a lens for the camera. Like you're putting on a different lens, if you need a different focal length to see this or to experience this in a different way than you would be with a kit lens, And I'm kind of at a point now where even like weed, like I'm not stoked. I just bought a bunch of weed, but I'm trying to get better about like, I don't do that anymore. I do that ceremonially with friends after training, and that's it. But I don't.
What does it help you with? Relax?
I don't know anymore. I don't. It's hard for me to like really articulate it because when I first started smoking, I was 19. And I was having crippling anxiety attacks, like really fucked up anxiety attacks. And I didn't care what I needed to do to stop them. I just wanted to try whatever. And I started to really enjoy smoking because it allowed me to relax in a way that like I had not experienced before 19. I was like burning at both ends at all times, had no concept of like, I don't know, like just listening to my body or like listening to mental strain, you know, I didn't know any better because my parents didn't know any better. And my life circumstances put me in a position where if I didn't keep moving, I would die, you know, like I wouldn't be able to stay out of state for college if I didn't work while I was there, you know, if I didn't find opportunities to stay on campus longer than I would be able to normally, you know, like I really felt like I was behind the 8 ball, like for a long time, you know, until really the last like 2-3 years, I've been able to like kind of relax in a way that like I just never experienced in my early 20s. But
yeah, I feel like weed definitely helps you connect with your body and listen to your body. My issue with it after about 26 started being that I just started becoming very lethargic the next day, which for me is kind of like a deal breaker because it really kills of my will. Well, yeah, I can't afford to not care. You just stop caring.
The apathy.
But I can again, I always say this, like it really depends on the person. Like, I mean, again, people like Joe Rogan, obviously hyper accomplished, but weed is kind of like their best pal, right? But he just, that works for him. And I have another friend who's like that, but I don't feel like it's like that for everybody. Definitely not like that for me. One thing I wanted to say is that it seems to be across the board true that whatever it is that the issue is, the giving to others, the feeling that you're in a mission to give to others to a real capacity, one that you're actually making a difference, not one in which you believe you make a difference, but one that actually you see that you're making a difference. That seems to be an antidote to a lot of bad things, like stress and, well, I mean, obviously from the social perspective, which is like, hey, I'm helpful, therefore I feel like I am somewhere in the hierarchy that I wasn't before. But also it's the fact that either you believe in God or don't believe in God, whatever it is, it seems to be a wise move to assume that you should be a good person. And when you help people, you have a very direct proof that you're actually doing something good in the world, which kind of relaxes you because you're like, well, you know, at least I did my best. And then it kind of brings you into a place of surrender and understanding and not necessarily, like you're saying, burning the candle on both ends, where you're just like, you have to try and do these things in order for them to be at a certain level so you can feel fulfilled. It's enough to actually help a few people a day to feel fully fulfilled. And then whatever it is else that you want to develop, you can do with a much more relaxed mind. I've noticed that across the board. People who devote themselves to help other people, they tend to be much more relaxed. It's like a different demeanor for them. What do you feel is like this relationship, right, between how much we can trust our minds and like a healthy mind? Do you think that we can reach a state? It's going to be a little bit of a loaded question because you have no way of knowing this, but just kind of like your sense. Do you think one day we're going to reach a state in which we kind of got close to eradicate that issue? So like, do you think we're going to, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we understood the mind and the brain and neuroscience to such a degree that we can pretty much give a person a pill that would pretty much set them free, or have a certain treatment that would basically eliminate mental illness?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of credence to, I mean, I can't speak to the science specifically, but
like I said, you have no way of knowing this. But
the
just
idea
what
behind what they're trying to do with Neuralink, where they would be able to stimulate parts of your brain and like basically change the neuroplasticity of your brain waves, you know, in order to like heal portions of your brain that are not functioning properly.
Paraplegics and certain types of blindness, like anything with neurological disorder, basically.
Yeah, I definitely believe that there is going to be a lot of work to be done over the next 50, 100 plus years, you know, with that. I think for me, where I get stuck with it a lot is like, I don't take medication for it, and I don't think I ever will, because I think it's actually healthier for me to have the challenge of how do you enjoy something that is inexpensively terrible sometimes, you know? How do you find the like the silver lining and stuff that again would break normal people? And I think that edge is kind of what allows me to keep going, you know, when other people would throw in the towel. Like, I think that helps me a lot, just to kind of remember, like, if I've accomplished all this, then there's not really anything that I can't accomplish, you know. But that mentality, I think, kind of gets removed when you think of yourself as a victim or as a patient or in need of a cure, where I really don't feel that way, you know. Like, it makes my life more difficult, period. You know, like I experience stress in a way that most people never experience stress because of how my memory works. I experience it to a detail that most people, again, like are not. I can give you a 90% accurate map of the house that I lived in until I was 2. Never been there since. I got the upstairs bathroom wrong.
I have
That's
a very similar thing. It's very interesting. I have a very crazy memory for like back in the day.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. First of all, that's a really good attitude, and I'm a big believer that frames everything, because the way that you view the situation changes the whole thing completely. Like you said, if you know that you're on the substance, it feels very different when you have no idea how it's going to end.
Yeah.
A point that Sam Harris made many times, which is like you can experience the exact same pain if you're lifting weights. And you know that the pain is because you're doing something good for your body that will probably benefit the way that you develop physically. And you can have the exact same pain just knowing that it's bone cancer, right?
Sure.
And that changes the whole thing, like the way you even experience that pain in that moment. So I'm a very firm believer that frame is everything around the situation, and it's amazing that you look at it that way. What does the medication do, though? It just dulls you out? It's just kind of like...
I think so. From the people who I know who have experience with SSRIs or like antidepressants in general, usually there's a good amount of weight gain. There's a good amount of like just like their mood totally shifts. And I definitely... Like, don't get me wrong, like, I seem pretty well adjusted and, like, seem pretty normal functioning. Like, people never know that I experience this unless I bring it up and talk about it. Like, you wouldn't know for most of the time interacting with me, you know? But I experience catatonia a lot, where I literally would be, like, inert and, like, won't accomplish anything for, I would say, like, 2 hours a day, you know? Like,
you just stare at the wall.
Stare at the phone, stare at the wall, like... nothing. Like, I don't actually have to be doing anything. And sometimes I actually like I don't know. I don't worry about it as much as I probably did when I was younger. When I was younger, it felt more like I was a fucking loser or I wasn't getting done. And now I really treat it more like, actually, you've experienced things that would break normal people, and it's okay just to relax, bro. You know, like, it's okay just to kind of like sit here and enjoy the breeze a little bit. Like, because I never did that prior, you know, I never really like had a metric for like, hey, you're tired, just relax, you know? So now I'm kind of like, like I said before, I think the disorganized thought pattern is just the hardest part for me, because on a daily basis, I mean, this happens to normal people, you know, they'll kind of like be, like unsure about what they want to do with this or that, you know, and it's like driving them nuts, but it's like, it's driving me nuts. And I can remember all of the factors in dizzying detail, you know, like in a way that's like, some of it does correlate and some of it does make it easier to understand, but some of it makes no sense and it's word salad and there's no correlation to each other. But
do you ever find yourself in two different moments at the same time?
Well, that's what I was saying before. Yeah, like
no, like straight up, like you don't know if you're before or now.
I can't tell the
difference. That's what you mean.
That's
like
what I
you
mean,
can
like,
literally don't know if you're there or here.
Like right now, when I was telling the story before, I wasn't getting super into the story. I was just telling bullet
But
points.
if you do, you might not be sure if you're in the elevator still.
While I'm telling you that stuff, what I'm seeing is the bridge I'm walking over, and like the taking the clothes off, and like the being in the elevator. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm experiencing internally when I'm speaking to you. And it's like, there's a certain level that like that's just your brain trying to populate the story that you're telling, and there's the other level of having schizophrenia with it, which is like I can't tell the difference between I am not physically in that space anymore and I am emotionally, temporally still in that space, which I find actually makes me like a very powerful performer, because it's not hard for me to tap into like sincere emotion. I went to school for it, so I should.
It also sounds a lot like PTSD.
It is, definitely. Yeah, and I'm a lot better with it, I would say. So the first year after it, it's hard for me because like I moved to Hollywood by myself after having like a bunch of like really shitty roommates, and I just needed to be alone, and all I did was work. I was biking 1,000 to 1,200 miles a month for Uber and DoorDash and Postmates at the time, so I didn't have access to better money. It still is the best money I've ever made in my life, you know, like just being able to consistently make $5 or $6 grand just because like I decided that like I'm gonna go work today and tomorrow and the day after and the day after. Like it gave me like a level of freedom that I hadn't experienced prior to that. And I like during that whole experience, like I was fucked. Like I literally like my rent got taken out while I was in the mental hospital. You know what I mean? There was no like lag of like, hey Jacob, go figure this out and come back. I went to a new job 13 days after getting out of the mental hospital.
Wow.
You know, like, yeah, like there was very, very little room for error, or little room for like a backup plan, which I think sometimes is good for me. It forces me to, like I said, wartime consigliaries, like it has to be done now, so do it, period. You know, like that helps me a lot. But yeah, I think like having the mindset, and I gotta give thanks to David Goggins, bro. Fuck, like David Goggins, reading his book. His book came out, I think, a little bit before the schizophrenic break, so it was already like in my awareness. He was already in my awareness, but getting to hear how he talks about certain events in his life really helped me. One, to have the courage to talk about my events to other people, and two, to kind of like help solidify my own impression of myself, you know, and like to really understand what I'm made of. Not what my father's made of, not what these people are made of, you know, but what am I actually made of when push comes to shove? What are the decisions that I make that like I can look back to at a certain point in life, and like whether I'm proud of it or not, I made the right decision, you know, like I made something that like,
It's your decision.
it's my decision, you know, it belongs to me.
So now that you're closer to much more stable and a functional place, you got into a lot of things. You mentioned something you really got into was crypto, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that, you know, people, I'm sure that like there's just so much content regarding crypto, and I think most of it is more around the lines of like suggestions and things like that, which I think that unless somebody really gets into it, it doesn't really inform general moves along the lines of like what people do in their lives. But I think that there's like a different portion to it, which is like what it represents, right?
Yeah.
Which is like this future idea of what currency is and what it will be. So obviously you're like a big believer. You think this is going to be like kind of like the money of the future. What would you say is the thing that convinced you the most about the nature of what it is that you think will make it the currency of the future, and something that will actually transform the way we do everything?
Well, I've been kind of slow to it. I started investing in 2017, kind of like right in the middle of that bull run. And that was a bull run for stocks as well as crypto. But it's just kind of when my awareness met with my willingness to actually dive in, you know.
And pay attention.
And yeah, and to sort of like pay attention to now, not the future, but now. What can I do now that will influence my future? And the thing that frustrates me a little bit about my early experience with it is I had really good instincts, actually. I didn't put $1 in until I had read articles for 3 weeks from everywhere. Like I did not care about the source. I needed to be able to make decisions for myself. And I think that's still one of the smartest things I've ever done. You know, it's because at no point during my 5 years in crypto did I need someone else's opinion to make a financial decision. And a lot of times when I did, it didn't work out well, as opposed to the stuff I already knew and understood from my own research. You know, like most of the times those decisions or those fundamentals are what has led me to like objective success with the market, you know. But for me, it was really like, I was definitely sold on the idea. Like the idea was huge to me. Like just the idea of like having an asset that gives you sovereignty that exists outside of just like national currencies. That was really appealing to me. But then a lot of it's just the simpleness of the math, you know, like if it's going to be this amount, but they believe it's going to be worth this amount over X amount of time. Well, then as I've learned now, like because like I said, everything pretty much changed for me in 2016. 2016 is like huge for like me realizing, wow, I need to like reassess my finances. I need to like totally change how I look at, you know, debt, liabilities, assets. Like these are words that I just like I didn't really understand prior to that. Like
money
didn't.
Yeah, a lot of
mean
people don't
anything.
understand money. It's a big one.
Yeah, I did not understand until probably like I said, I mean, schizophrenic break, 13 days later, I'm back to work and I'm like, I have like $50 worth of cash flow, you know, between my bills and what I'm making at the time, and no like prospects for other work or anything. Like, and again, in like yeah, you had a schizophrenic break and it's over now, but you're still not on medication and you're still kind of dealing with it, you know, for, I would say, yeah, like 6 months to a year, I was still having like severe like PTSD with it in a way where it's like, I'm glad it's over, but that was gnarly at the time, you know. And one of the only ways it actually got me out of it was making money. Like it just allowed me to kind of.
Why does it make you feel safer? That it's
I think it does. I think it does, and it also makes me feel in the same way as like hosting the events, like makes me feel like a leader or kind of like responsibility,
a meaning,
You know, like that definitely helps.
Something is happening.
But the crypto specifically enabled me to feel like I was good at something as well. You know, I think that was the other important thing, was it was something that was new that I also felt like I could be good at. Whereas a lot of times at that time period of my life, when I would try something new and I felt like shit at it, like that would impact my ability to do it, you know, or like with parkour, I was willing to persevere, but with a lot of other things I haven't been. But crypto was one where I knew that was plan A back in 2017, and I didn't act like it was plan A. I made decisions as if it was still a safety net. And then the 2020 market starts to spike up, and I know what's happening now because I've already experienced it in 2017, 2018. And I made some good decisions then. Like when it hits its bottom in March 2020, I did buy some. You know, I bought $400, $500 worth, but I should have bought $3,000 worth, you know, and I had the capital to do so. And now I'm kind of like changing my approach to the acquisition and sale or holding of assets in a way that like I couldn't have had a conversation about it 5 years ago, you know. Whereas now it's like I really believe, both for myself and for my experiences traveling around, I do think it's going to introduce a level of prosperity and a level of functionality for the average person that like they still don't get it because they're still paying overdraft fees at their bank. You know, like they still think that their credit is evil. Like they don't get it yet, you know? And that's kind of been, that was a huge thing for me, is like removing the victim mentality with money, like removing the thinking my father was coming to save me, because my dad makes a lot of money and I kind of always assumed he was going to help at a certain point, you know, and that was wrong, you know. So I really had to get to that bottoming out point. And the way I always refer to it is your lowest points are the best times to invest in yourself. So when all the chips are against you and when everyone else is like leaving you high and dry or whatever, that's the time where you need to pay close fucking attention to what's going on in your life, to what's good in your life and what isn't, and to double down, you know, on whatever that is, so that you have something to come out of it, you know, and you can track growth from wherever you were at that bottom point.
And you feel like you're starting to see like what that structure is for yourself?
I think that money has allowed me to artificially create that structure. I think that structure doesn't exist as an adult. Like, you know, it might if you're married or if you have a child or if you have a career that you've been in for a really long time. But I'm a fucking performer, you know, like there is no charted path. And crypto and finances has kind of allowed me like you still have to learn it step by step, you know. Like I started with like $100 and that was a lot for me at the time, you know, like that was hard for me to do, but I had to get through the habit of I have this for now, but what it buys me later is more valuable than what I could spend it on now, you know, to the point where you get like $1,000 in and you watch it go underneath $1,000 and you're thinking, oh wow, well that's my rent, you know, I could have used that for something else. To, you know, in 2020 my goal was to hit 10,000 in my accounts total, and by the end of 2020 I was sitting at 25-30,000, you know, and like I didn't even know that I was going to get that quick, you know. But now I'm kind of like, now that I have a better understanding of what a 4-figure number is and how to move a 4-figure number around, a 5-figure number is starting to become more normal to me. You know, like I mentioned earlier, my next play in crypto is going to be a $10,000 play. And I've never done that before, you know, like I've done smaller 4-figure ones like over time, but this is going to be a substantial amount, you know, like $8,000 to $10,000 over the course of like a month or so, that it comes down to the math for me, you know. And this is very hard for me to understand until I would say the last 2 years. There's a couple things that came into my awareness that have dramatically changed how I look at money. One of which is loan income does not count as taxable income. And that was huge. When I understood that kind of like, it made Bitcoin more valuable to me, because like, yes, it is a store of value. Yes, it is a currency. I don't like thinking of Bitcoin as a currency because it's actually a really shitty currency. It's a great store of value. It's really good at being like hard to hack and being remarkably simple, and
Well, it's also the one that everything else is based on.
it's the one everything is based on. It's the one everything is currently, like, the market is set against that, the same way that like other stock markets are based around the US dollar. There's just a lot of market dynamics that are heavily reliant on Bitcoin, but the underlying is what's actually important to me, which is that, like, say you have one Bitcoin, you can portion that out and however smallest denominations that you want across other platforms, but you're also able to have autonomy where I don't have to go to a bank and ask for a loan. I have X amount of crypto, which allows me to lend out X amount of it and to receive a loan in return.
Right, but I thought you were talking about the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins.
But you can do it with both. It's just that, like, technically that ability is built on Ethereum, but the underlying, like, belief of it, of the sovereignty and of being able to, like, have an asset that you hold as collateral and that other people will pay you for, is core to Bitcoin. Ethereum is what makes it easier to do it, because that's kind of the layer one solution that allows people to build applications upon Bitcoin, right. Whereas otherwise it's very slow to code on top of it.
Yeah, you have a few now that are starting to kind of be considered more. Cardano is one of them. There's
it's another layer one solution, yeah.
I think they're layer 2 or 3 in the final stages that they're planning on.
No, Cardano is a layer one solution. Layer one meaning like it's the infrastructure. So
No, but then like in the integration, the final integration they're working on is this, from what I understand, is essentially to have all of the functionalities, including what ETH is doing and Bitcoin is doing, but also what Oracle is doing, like all at once.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure what Oracle is doing, but what I wanted to say is that, so the loan thing, so you don't get taxed on the loan, right?
The same way you don't get taxed on your student loans or
right.
car loan.
But if you can take profit, you will get taxed only on the profit. But then
correct.
you can get So that's actually. But then I guess the only thing is the gamble. Like if you take the loan, you lose the whole thing.
Yeah, which is what's currently happening to me, which sucks, bro. Like I could potentially lose like 25, 30 grand right now, because it's like I have it with a platform.
Why not just sit on it if you know that it
doesn't matter.
Gonna come up?
It's in a platform that it's currently they have seized withdrawals. You can't take your stuff out. You can't move.
Oh, because they might
because they might get liquidated.
That's fucking crazy.
It's fucking terrible. So the only thing that gives me some security in this is that they've had insolvency cases and stuff like that come up as early as 2020, which to me kind of makes me believe it's just market FUD, and like it gives me a little bit of hope that like, okay, well, this is what happens in bear markets is people wave the red flags and they say that all this is going to happen to draw up fear so that they can, buy from the people who are fearful, So in a best case scenario, we go through this time period, and I will lose $4,000 regardless, because that's what I have locked up with them. The rest, I was smart, and I uncollateralized my loans. I paid them off early because I saw that we were going lower. And this is the part that pisses me off, because I'm a fucking adult. I'm not a child. I'm using this platform because I understand how to use it, and for them to take away my ability to, uncollateralize my loans and to pay them off defeats the purpose of me using the product. Like, why am I using the product
if
I
don't have
autonomy?
What platform is this?
This is called Celsius Network. And they're great. They have the best loan product in the game, like not even close. In California, you can get a 0% loan, and you can pay it off in 3 years if you want.
Sure, but then you also have the other side, which is that.
Yeah, which is that your shit's
like I don't know if they would.
Right
well, I don't have a way to know, but I don't think they would. I don't feel like it would happen with Crypto.com.
Well, Crypto.com is dealing with the same thing. So BlockFi, Crypto.com, and Celsius are all kind of dealing with the same SEC issue right now, where they're trying to define what is a commodity, what is a security, and what is, in Bitcoin's case, it's property. They've already, since 2014, they've legally defined it as property.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is sick.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like that actually like gives us legal framework with Bitcoin that is like a lot safer for the average person to hold Bitcoin, whereas something like Ethereum is a security. It's something that like can be speculated upon. It's highly centralized. Like it had like an initial offering that was like heavily benefited the people who were in first. There's a number of things with it that make it like something that you would have to be an accredited investor to hold, which sucks because it really is like, I think it's one of the best like accesses to wealth as someone who does not currently have wealth. Like I was able to take like $10,000 worth of credit card debt last year and turned that into, at the height, $70,000, you know? And it's like, that's way down now. It's like 25 or 30 grand, but it was 10, you know? And it was debt that I took that, you know, I either could have had it sit, because at this point I have a lot of credit, you know, I'm totally opposite of the camp who like is afraid of it and won't utilize it. I have 7 credit cards, you know, like I really know how to play the game now in a way where like they give me free money all the time. Like the only reason why I'm doing that $10,000 bet is because they're giving me a 0% balance transfer deal, you know, like I only make these decisions based upon what they're allowing me to do, you know?
Right.
But as I get more income and as I have more understanding of it, it puts me in a better position to buy assets that I will then be able to, I'm the one who dictates the loans. I don't have to deal with the credit anymore. But the credit kind of is like I have my job, and then I have the bets I'm willing to take with credit that will end up making me 3-4 years salary in one point, as long as I actually take the profits, which that I would say is the number one thing that I'm currently in the process of trying to like rebuild my habits around when I take profits, if I take profits, and how I take profits. Like fundamentally, I would like to keep buying Bitcoin and never sell it ever, because I understand, mathematically speaking, unless I become immortal somehow, it will continue to go up in value for the rest of the time I'm alive. Period.
Well, that's how things go. Yeah, but eventually you don't benefit from it at all if you don't cash it out in some way.
Specifically with Bitcoin, in a way where
no, but like you need to take profit, like let's say 50 years from now, right?
Sure.
You need, right. So like not ever. It's just that a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a perfect world where you make a lot of money doing that or something else, what do you feel, what's your vision and where most of that money is going to go? Is it going to be towards what you're doing now with communities with parkour? Is it like something that completely different? Or do you want to have something in general that just involves helping other human beings in some form?
This is where I'm kind of struggling, is like I'm trying to figure it out ahead of time, you know, because there's no guarantee that it's going to happen, but I have reason to believe that the money decisions I'll make this year, separate from if I get all that wiped, because if I get that wiped, that's fucked, bro. That like dramatically changes my bottom line in 2025, like no cap, you know, like that puts me in I'm gonna have to work way harder than I would otherwise, you know, because I already did that work. I already did a lot of work last year, you know, and the year prior. So I think what it'll allow me, and what I'm trying to create for myself right now, is essentially, if I think back objectively as a performer to the performances I'm most proud of, or like the things I got the best response from other people on, what I was experiencing was getting to throw myself 100% into the work. I was a student. I was a child, you know, like I didn't have other responsibilities. And as an adult, that's not how the world works. You know, you got bills. I got a fucking car now. I never had a car before. You know, there's a big difference between not having a car and paying insurance and gas at the height of what gas is at, you know. And I didn't want to drive a beater, you know. I don't think that you turn 30, get your first car and have a shitty car. I don't think that's a good decision, you know. Like you should get something that you're proud of and that you'll enjoy. And I did, you know, I got something that I enjoy, but it puts the baseline of how much I have to make and how much my expenses are higher than I would like it to be normally. But I've kind of committed to that because I know 2025, profit taking year, you know, it puts me in a position where I'll probably make if I lose all that, low 6 figures. If I get to keep that plus what I'm putting in, probably somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000 portfolio size, which is like, never experienced that before, you know, not even close. So to me, it's like,
it's good money.
It's a lot of money.
$500,000 is good money.
It's a lot of money, you know.
There's a lot you can do with that.
It would put me in a position where I can essentially recreate the experience of being a child, insofar as like I can spend my time doing whatever I want, you know. Like I can, like, a big thing for me lately has been playing piano. Like I have been classically chorally trained, you know, for like 11 years. I went to Catholic school for
this is something we didn't touch on, because you also you're a musician. You rap, right?
Rap and sing.
Yep.
Yeah, and like piano is something that like I never actually dove into it, but I learned around the piano for like a decade, you know, like a really, really long time. So now when I sit down to it, it's pretty intuitive to me in a way where like guitar has never felt that intuitive to me. I've had a guitar for years and it's still, I sound like an idiot when I sit down.
I feel the same way, by the way. Not that I play the piano at all, but like every time I try the guitar, I have one, and every time I try, it's just like there's too many variations in it. It just doesn't make any sense to how my brain works. And I always feel like when I see people play the piano, I mean, I don't have a way to know because I never actually tried. But I feel like there's some kind of structure there that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for me at least. But that's the type of thing where it's like I'm trying to make more time for stuff where I know I'll enjoy it, but I also know it'll help me get more of what I want in life. And ultimately what I want is just to be able to do whatever I want, you know? Like I want to be able to like spend my time going on friends' podcasts or like going to film festivals and like meeting connections that way, you know? I want to live a life of privilege that you don't get unless you were born rich or have a lot of money. And it's like, I was not born rich and I don't have a family that's going to give it to me. So I actually have to go get it, but I'm not willing to get it in the way I see a lot of people get it, where they have the nice job or they like are able to play the social game in a way that I'm too abrasive for. You know, like I do not function well when I have a boss. It's just not how I work well, you know. I wish I'd known that earlier because I feel like I would have gone self-employed like way earlier in life. But I mean, it is what it is now. And like it's the money will allow me to be more of myself in a way that like I actually think will make me a better person, which sounds ridiculous, but now and it's not as bad now with the car as with the bike. I was a savage human being when I was biking 1,200 miles a month, bro. Like people used to pick fights with me like all the time. I don't know what it is about me, but they would just like look at me like, that guy, I want to fuck with that guy. You know, it would happen to me regularly where people would either start fist fights with me. I like had a knife pulled on me in the metro. Like people really, something about my energy at that time, you know, it was like it begged the question for violence. You know, I was open to the violence, you know, in a way that like I didn't want that, but that's kind of like what the universe was picking up for me. It was like, life is rough, you know, when I'm trying to outpace cars or I'm going to get hit by them, you know.
That's so interesting.
People throw stuff at me while I was on the car trying to start fights with me. Like something about that energy. And I noticed this about myself in general. That's what I was saying about the dragon and all that shit. Like it's when I'm really like lit up, it's very hard not to notice me, you know, like if I'm in a room, like you will be aware that I'm there if I'm like particularly feeling a certain way, you know, like I'm not good at hiding my emotions, and I have a presence, you know, like, but yeah, that period of time was really weird because it was like I don't love that part of myself. Like I try really hard not to tap into that like hyper aggression because I don't think it's really true to like how I actually experience life. It's a byproduct. I get frustrated, you know, I get angry like anybody does, but the level of like irrational aggression, I do think is partially linked to the schizophrenia or the delusion. And two, it's just like, I don't like having to remind people, you know, like people will come up and be like, oh, like talking shit, like, oh, you fucking pussy, all this. And then I change real quick and I look at them like this and I talk to them like this. And then they remember, oh, fuck, wrong guy, what the fuck? And it's like, I don't mind having to tap into that, but I don't like how easy it feels for me to snap and fucking break this person in half if I have to. I don't like how like close that still feels, you know, like I would like to be more happy-go-lucky. Like that's why I moved to California, you know, is to lower the volume on that pace of life and, you know, to be able to just kind of enjoy myself more. But as I get older and as I like deal with my own psychosis and like, you know, being a man and being able to stick up for myself, like I have understood I do have to be more in like the abrasive or serious camp because it's going to allow me to not deal with stuff that I would deal with if I were more happy-go-lucky, you know, like disrespect from other people or just kind of like being led around, you know, on experiences that you aren't actually enjoying yourself. Like that was something that I didn't really understand until the schizophrenic break. Like I cut so many people out of my life after that who just did not belong there, and I had no presence of mind to understand like this person is an anchor, you know, not a sail, and I had no way of knowing that, you know, I didn't have a metric for it. And then a combination of like starting to understand money and starting to like rebuild I've always had good self-confidence, but normally when it's tied to performance, like I'm good at public speaking. I've been performing on stage since I was really young, like 2 or 3 years old. Like it's not hard for me to sit here and talk to you, but it was really hard for me for a while to be able to express what I'm actually feeling, or like why I'm frustrated, or when people are like, oh, you're kind of aggressive and abrasive. And it's like, oh, it's because you hear fucking demonic voices and your dad's a grade A asshole. It's like, yeah, you got some shit that is like helping you stay in that space, and like, I think that is really when I have the money, it's going to be like, I'm going to actually allow myself to like fully put that shit behind me. I don't have any excuse to like.
You think so?
Because really
I'm sure you can understand. I'm sure you can, even though you have your reasons, just like everybody else. But I'm sure you can understand that a person who's not you, they don't know any of that, nor do they care. There's like, hey, right now in this moment, you're being in my space, in a certain way that I don't like, and that's it. And this is something that I'm always acutely aware of, because there's a certain component to being not fully in control of what you are inside in the presence of other people. That is purely your responsibility. It doesn't really matter what you went through. Now, obviously, in retrospect, you can always look back, and if people actually care, you can always kind of explain yourself and say, hey, this is this and this is that. But in the end of the day, like you said, you came out of the institution, and you had to go back to work.
Yeah, right back to work.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's life, right? And I think that you do have the right attitude around it, which is like, this is the frame. And I do believe that there's a certain component of plight that we have to go in life in order to actually understand what it's about and what we're about. But at a certain point, at least for me, I learned that I had to put a lot of those defense mechanisms that I've had around the subjects of violence and around what I come across to people, because I knew that in the end of the day, all of those stories I'm telling myself, unless they bring me closer to other people, they actually don't matter. Like, I can tell them all day, and it sounds like you found something very similar, which is that the contribution part, which is the part where you feel you're not just a part of a community, but you're leading a community to a certain place, which gives you a certain sense of meaning that just being a part of it doesn't give you.
Yeah.
And it also probably changed and shifted certain elements of abilities, because you feel that you actually now a more integral part of what this whole thing is.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like the ultimate thing of like the ultimate card that is like that would be to feel more a part of the world, which is, for me, it's kind of like I also had like this, a lot of things like that because of how I was raised and everything that happened to me when I was a kid. Very like a lot of like antisocial elements, but I feel like feeling that you're more a part of the world because you're doing something for the world that you see that has real value helps you not just feel more comfortable, but also be more productive and be more in general of who you can be in this world. Because again, you feel you're more part of the tapestry of what the world is actually doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a big component. So now it sounds like you really found a lot of right ways to frame your situation and to look at it in a way that is more productive than not.
Yeah.
In the moments that we slip, I always say we always have to allow ourselves to still assume that, you know, the worst is not necessarily behind us. We would like to think so, but I'm always prepared for whatever it is that might happen next. Do you feel that you have the kind of like the package now to deal with whatever it is from that 1 week that you experienced? That was kind of like,
I go back and forth. Like sometimes it's more, I mean, everyone has days where they're depressed or they're down on themselves. There are days for sure when I like question it, but anytime where I'm like just actually present and actually with myself and actually like taking stock of like, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And even if it's not on a time scale that someone else understands or respects, I'm going to find a way to will that into my world, you know, because it happens to me all the time, whether I want it or I don't, you know. It's like, if I'm not very careful about what I put into the universe, it's coming back to me in another shape or form, you know. And I think like that was the biggest thing for me, was just actually taking full stock of my own masculine frame and being willing to be immovable in a way where I probably felt bad about being immovable before, you know, like I don't think I'm that different than I used to be. I'm just more good at setting boundaries and being like, yeah, that's fine. You can say whatever you want. I'm going to do this, period. You know,
you keep mentioning the masculinity part.
Yeah.
Why is this so important to you?
I think that it was, I think partially because of the nature of that relationship. I was trying to give in to more of the like lack of gender norms and stuff like that. And I think that it put me in the hospital. So I think afterwards, you know, and having done a lot of research on dating stuff and stuff since, it's like, I'm realizing if I look back holistically on the relationships I've had or the interactions with women where I enjoyed it, you know, or where it was healthy for me, it was when I was in a traditional masculine frame, you know, and I think just because of a number of factors, how I look, how I sound, how I dress, you know, there's certain expectations from women when you present yourself a certain way, that you can choose to ignore and make your life difficult, or you can just fucking get over it and learn the game and move accordingly, you know? And I think that was something that where I just like I didn't understand, you know, how important it actually was to maintain a masculine frame if that's how you want to be purported, or vice versa, if you were to remove the masculine frame, what you're going to get, you know, from it.
So you're saying the way you comport yourself is key in those relationships.
Bro. Yeah, it's the difference between being taken advantage of by, you know, by my parents or friends that are in the best interest of me, you know, of roommates who owe me money still or fucking me over or stuff like that. Like, I wouldn't put my foot down as much as like, now I'm fucking clear with people. And if you have a problem, that's fine. I'll be fine on my own, you know, like, and it took me a while to get over the fear of, I've probably always known that, you know, I started traveling alone when I was 13, you know, like I've really like, there's not very much that I've like wanted that I haven't been able to go get in some respect, you know? And I think I forget that a lot. Like and that was one of the things that Schizophrenic Break like made really, really present, was like the things that I do have. I have a lot of, you know, I have a lot of people in my life that fucking love me. I don't totally understand why, but they're there, you know, and like they support me in a way that like isn't necessarily always obvious. Like it's not like a 24/7 thing, you know, but.
So yeah, so you were saying that the masculine frame is a very important one, because it sets up certain understandings and expectations from your environment, not just women, but the people in general.
And from myself even, you know, like I expect myself to comport myself in a certain way because I have a schedule, or because I have to work out, because I have to do this or that, you know, like the hosting the events on Saturday was huge for me because it enabled me to put my foot down with work and say, hey, I'm not available on Saturdays, period. You can have whoever else you want to have here. That's fine. I will not be present because I have something else in my life that's more important that I'm not willing to back out on, you know, like that really helps me, especially again, in a time where it's like, I was experiencing like serious PTSD, like fucked up PTSD, not on medication, on my own in Hollywood in peak pandemic fucking times, you know, like, where it was dark to take the red line every day, you know, where like if I wasn't getting attacked by someone on crack, I was interacting with someone on crack, you know. There's just like a level of like
yeah, there was a lot of that during the pandemic.
It was nuts, dude. I was right up front with it. I started doing Postmates the day after the first riots, you know, like the I forget if it was, I don't think it was Eric Garner, but it was another man who was killed like right around that time period in 2020, you know, where it was like right after that the riots happened, and I just didn't happen to see the news the day before, but it was like that day I decided to go down on my bike on downtown, and it's like destroyed, like chaotic in a way where like I had never seen it like that before, you know, and it was a very sobering moment for me, because it kind of like, I don't know, like I said before, wartime consigliere, something in me like just like wakes up when the chips are on the table like that, where it's like I don't have a choice, I actually have to like keep going forward. That like really, it's just always been like that for me. Like I don't know where it comes from, I've just always been like that. Like, and it really,
what do you push the most when all the boats are burned?
Yeah, like when I like don't have any other choice other than to keep going. Well, yeah, I mean it's what you're saying, like being willing to burn the boats and just like go to the other shore. Like I think a lot of times I like, and everyone like, it's terrifying to make that leap a lot of times, but I have so many instances in my early life where I did that without realizing, I moved to LA when I was 21. I knew one person here, I didn't know anyone. I had $5,000 to my name, and that was the most amount of money I'd ever seen in my life. I had no clue that would only last me 3 months, like.
In LA, they won't. I'm surprised it lasted for 3 months. There's actually
just last long.
To that, I wanted to say something also to when you said you just go out to train to have fun.
Yeah.
I mentioned this in a podcast before, but there's this book, The Rise of Superman.
Oh, I know that one.
You heard about this?
Yeah,
Did you read it?
I know of it. I haven't read it. But.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's like he basically follows a bunch of extreme athletes around. Mm-hmm. And what he discovered is that flow, we know it's a real state, but but then he discovered that it actually takes a different form when you talk about extreme sports, because it's life or death.
Yeah.
And because it's life or death, you burn all the boats, and you don't have a choice but to go to flow or you die. Yeah. And that's essentially all those people, what they chase is the flow. It's not glory, it's not the achievements, it's the feeling.
Yeah.
They want the feeling of flow, which feels amazing, and they found a shortcut because you make it or you die.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the book more focuses on the reason it's called The Rise of Superman is because the final claim he kind of makes is that he's not sure that there's an upper bound there. Like he thinks that it might be infinite in bound. Like it can go as crazy as I don't know, jumping fucking 20 feet. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
So
I think I'm somewhere in between on that.
It's a radical claim, but he kind of builds it up slowly. I'm not sure I'm buying it fully, but that's essentially what the book is about. And actually, I'm not even sure he makes it explicitly, but it's definitely implicit in what he's saying. So I want to go back for just a second to that whole masculine idea. So do you think that, it's going to enrage a lot of people? There are a couple of dudes trying to talk about these issues just without a woman present. But like, do you feel, because I happen to think that those things, like on these issues, are much more with Jordan Peterson, which is like, you have to assume that the thing that you are, the role you are here to play, no matter what it is, it still have some definitions that are outside of your control, like your sex, for example.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I happen to know somebody who's an incredible human being that has kind of like, I don't even know what the technical term is, but like the gender fluidity thing, where it's like I don't know what it's called. I don't want to put a name on it. I'm not sure what it is, but I know that people like 100%, they have like a real condition sometimes, which it's not, they don't even see it as a condition. It's like they feel like both a man and a woman. And it creates a lot of psychological problems because you feel, first of all, you feel very judged. Even in liberal California, there's still like a lot of judgment around, like when you try and go and like, to the doctor or something, and there's like you still kind of wear a wig or something, and it's just like people just kind of giggle behind your back. That fucks you up. Like, and I know from at least an example of one that it's an incredible human being.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do with, but he's also not in your face about it.
Yeah.
Or she's not in your face about it. But what I'm noticing is that there seems to be like a giant slice of that world that just kind of rides that.
Yeah.
And it actually ruins it for the people who really have that. Yeah. They just need, it feels like they just need a thing. Like they need a thing. Platform. So they adopt that thing. And now they don't care. It's just like it seems to be like a completely selfish thing. And you can even see, for the most part, you can see it in the person, in the way that they're talking. Like you can see that there's no one home. Like they don't care about what is coming at them.
Yeah.
They only care about what they want to say. So it's not hard for me to guess like where you fall on the kind of like on the spectrum there of like what you think about that. But in terms of your personal experience, because you said that you feel, if I understood you correctly, you said that you feel that there was a certain price you paid because you didn't assume a certain frame.
Yeah.
Both in a relationship and the way that people were treating you, right? And when you felt that you started assuming it, all of a sudden, all of that started shifting. My only question to you would be, and this is a real question, like there's always this danger that whenever we get into something new that works for us, we tend to evangelize it to like almost an extreme level.
Yeah.
Because I do notice, I'm not sure I'm noticing it in you because I haven't interacted with you enough on the subject, but I do notice that in males that kind of adopt this whole like, no, we have to be men, like they take it to such an extreme that it also becomes a problem in that it becomes almost like just like that whole world when they're in your face about it, like just accept me as whatever I'm telling you I am.
Yeah.
It becomes about like, hey, no, like, no, I'm making those rules. I'm doing this. They take the masculine to like, again, a problematic place, which is like everything is a conflict. Which for the way that I view it is like, no, the difference is that the true confident man, when something coming at you, unless it's something that is very clearly now a problem and you immediately know you have to do something about it, you're not moving forward. You just stand your ground.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's the difference, which is like, it's not a reactive thing. It's like, no, this is where my space is. You're going to enter too close. Something's going to happen. And I don't mean just physically. I mean, just also like metaphorically in all its aspects, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible to also take it too far, that attitude?
I think it depends on what age you are, because I think from age 18 till 26, 27, I would say I was pretty fluid in my understanding of self, like I still definitely thought of myself as like a heterosexual male. Like that's who I was pursuing, was heterosexual women. That was kind of like the end of like what I thought of outside of that until like maybe 23 or 24, I start to kind of like expand my understanding of my own sexuality or my own interest in that, or like where I fall in line with that. Because being a theater kid is weird, it's like you're probably around more gay people than the average person in high school is, in a concentrated area. So you're like picking up habits and tendencies that maybe you didn't realize you were doing, or like behaviors. Like I've performed in drag like a bunch of times, and didn't think anything of it, but I have people who are close to me who are more experiencing what you're talking about, like the genuine confusion or the mixed feelings of being a man and a woman, which is very serious, and I think it's tough. Like I am in the camp where like you shouldn't make a physical alteration decision until you're 25 or older, because I know for myself, like the amount of like difference in brain neuroplasticity, like it's wild, when I think about actually who I was pre 25 and who I am post 25 is a completely different person, but yeah, for me, like exiting that masculine frame or like allowing myself to be more fluid or more movable kind of just like led me to a lot of being mistreated by women or friends or people in a way where it's like, it's not like I'm learning anything other than I don't want to do that again, So it kind of became difficult for me, where I was just accepting whatever was coming into my life in terms of like dating and respect and power and stuff like that. And I didn't really think about it much, especially in college. I didn't have to work very hard to meet women, or when I lived on the East Coast in general, I didn't have to work very hard. I have a good personality. I'm friendly, and I took good care of myself. On the West Coast, it's totally different. I have to like reinvent myself literally if I'm going to get any interest from women at all out here, in a way where it's like, it's fucking exhausting, and I kind of don't care anymore. Like I'm getting to the point now where I'm setting up my skill set and my money so that once those things are set up, I can keep doing that as long as I want. And if a girl comes into that, cool. And if not, it's not going to help me at all to continue chasing women who don't respect me, don't enjoy my time or the time that I spend on them, And it's like, at the most, I'm going to get a couple orgasms out of it. And it's like, that's not enough for me at 30, as it was when I was 21. Like, it's just kind of like, I don't know, my expectations for what I need out of.
Well, you want a more meaningful relationship.
I love it.
Not something that, not like a dating game, but an actual like getting to know a person and
which is tough to find here. It's very tough to find here.
Yeah,
and I'm super open to it. But it's like I'm kind of like at a point now where it's like I don't actually need to. Part of why I have schizophrenia and part of why I've got into my life circumstances is the hopeless romantic, is the the surrender to the unknown instead of planting a flag and fucking deciding, And it's like, especially as I get older and like the more I learn about like dating and hypergamy and all these different things, it's like, oh, well, I actually just need to be more of myself, not less of myself. And when I get to a point where I'm all of myself in the best form that I can be, then it would make sense that I'm going to meet someone that matches that better, as opposed to like, a couple of the girls I've dated in the last year is like, it was an uphill battle to fucking go out with them in the first place. And it's like, it's inconsistent. It's really good when I'm with them in person, like the chemistry's there, the sex is there, like the, talking, the relationship is there. But then as soon as she's gone, she's gone. And then I have to like completely rehook her in to go through the process, instead of when I was younger, it wasn't as hard, you know, like women would just come back to me, you know? So I think I'm trying to find a balance now between like the traditional male aspects of my personality that serve me and the traditional feminine aspects of my personality that end up really causing me headaches, you know? Like I care about people, you know, like it's very hard for me not to sincerely give a shit about someone when I get to have a long conversation with them or when I get to know them a little bit. And women don't want that when you're starting to date them. They want to feel like they have to convince you that they're worth it, and you got to play that they mean nothing to you for the first 2 months, you know? And I'm just not good at that. Like I'm not very good at like hiding my intentions or playing coy. Like, so now I'm kind of in the process of like actually reassessing and rebuilding what I need for myself and for like my social circumstances, you know?
I think competence is really the main key here, because if you get good at the thing you do, either it's parkour or business or whatever it is, that's very attractive just on its own right, just because you're kind of doing a thing that works, which is an indicator that, you know, you're a pretty safe bet as far as a mate. But the other thing I feel it is that it also gives you the right kind of focus where there's enough of you invested in something else that kind of takes you away from just being hyper focused on this whatever girl you find. Which sometimes is hard to make a distinction, but as long as we put the attention on the thing we do more, it automatically creates that buffer. That is the thing that seems like you're not invested. It's just that I'm way more interested in the thing that I do. Yeah, that's essentially what it is.
I know, that's the one thing I miss about the last relationship I was in was horrible, super unhealthy for me. It put me in the mental hospital. But it gave me the frame to be the loving boyfriend, which I'd never experienced before. You know, like,
what do you mean? Like,
I never got to be that before. When I was in dating and in relationship, I was there because women wanted me to fuck them, and that was it. Like my personality, my life did not matter to them, you know, like that was it. I only kind of got the fuckboy energy because I guess that's what I was putting out and that's what I was receiving, you know? And that last relationship was like, that girl treated me horribly the whole time. And I had no clue. I just was not aware because I was so focused on like being my best self, you know, like I was just focused on what can I bring to the table? What can I do that makes me like a worthwhile partner, that I didn't even think to fucking pay attention to whether or not this person is doing the same for me, you know? But I think that was good for me just because like I didn't really, like I said, I didn't have an at-bat to do that before. I didn't know what that felt like. And now I know what that feels like. And I know what it feels like to have it not reciprocated and to be like mistreated and misrespected for it, you know? In a way where ultimately like it'll help me moving forward in whatever I have next. But my tolerance for bullshit is way, way lower now. And especially in LA, it's like most of the time I'm better off just kind of like focusing on what I'm doing.
That's probably healthy.
Yeah. It's tough for me though, being someone who like sexuality is important to me, you know. It's like, and again, especially like I said, a lot of my peers now are like younger guys, so it's like they don't know what the fuck they're talking about a lot of times when they're talking about girls. So it's either I don't talk about it or I only talk about it with friends who know what they're talking about, you know, because it's kind of like I don't know, everyone has like a different perception and understanding of like socializing and like dating in that respect, where it's like you can only impart so much of your experience to someone else or your frame or your thoughts or experiences, you know? Like,
I feel like in this field in particular, the guys who are pretty good with girls, they tend to not really talk about it unless they make money out of it.
Yeah,
they kind of like, you know, they have some YouTube channel or whatever. And unfortunately, a lot of this like fluff on the surface, which is, you know, that whole game, right? Of pursuing women. There's like, what was it? There was the book called The Game, right? There was right?
Neil Strauss.
Yes. But I don't know if you know, but like in his later work, he admitted that all of that stuff, that
was the worst.
It's not that it's the worst, it's just the wrong frame. Approach, it's the wrong focus, because there's always a larger game than what you realize. And I remember he was talking about how at a certain point when he was doing this whole seducing game, at a certain point he realized he was saying, I could see the Matrix. Like I could see the moves. I could see like everything. But his later work, everything that he experienced with the love of his life, how he cheated on her and all that stuff, he always felt empty still.
Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, it's like knowing I always equate it to the difference between making money for the sake of making money, which is equivalent to conquering and fucking, and actually doing something that is worth something for other people, and because of it you make a lot of money. So there's a difference between I don't know, just like anybody in the stock market and Elon Musk, right?
Sure.
And just like that, there's a difference between just being able to conquer a bunch of women and fuck them, and even if you think you're creating some meaningful moments with them, but they're so superficial that you don't actually learn who they really are, because you both are playing a game, which is fine, but you never actually understand what the human component here is. And I think only when you get to that deeper place of like the true value, which, like you said correctly, unfortunately in our society is not very valued, especially in LA. Maybe in smaller towns it's much more valued. But most people don't know how to look to appreciate that. And I think that's also the problem with, it's like the cheesiest thing you can say, and it's very cliche, but it is true. It's the problem with most of what the world is experiencing in the West, I think, is the fact that people have the wrong focus of where the value is. They value money for money. They don't realize that money is just an indicator of how much value you're doing. It's like, it literally is, right? I think Alan once said, it's like recession is like showing up for a construction site and saying, we don't have enough inches. I was like, what do you mean we don't have enough inches? Well, like, no. Do you have wood? Yeah. Do you have tools? Yeah. But we don't have inches. Like, what are you talking about? So it's like, just do the thing, right? So I'm not doing it unless I'm getting the marker, the indicator. And that is the kind of like the confusion that people have. Now, obviously, when you get, into Eastern traditions and meditation, or when you're really high on psychedelics for a few moments, you kind of peer through that veil. You really see the truth of that. But it takes some doing, or it takes some substances, but it takes some kind of a commitment to understand that what I'm saying right now is not a metaphor. This is literally the truth. And only when people can look at things and the things that they do as the thing that potentially can bring value, both in relationships, in business, and whatever it is, I think only then the true change is going to start happening. But again, unfortunately, for anybody who wants to play that game earlier, they're kind of like in a place where they have to accept that they will be isolated. They will be more alone more often, because not as many people see that truth. And then you just have to be okay with, like you said, just doing your thing.
I wish that was one of the questions that someone had asked me to talk about, was like, if I had advice for like my early 20s self. And I think that's great. What you just said is like, you're going to be alone more often than you think you are. But specifically, like, for the average young male who is listening to this, who has, some level of mental disorder, whether it's like bipolar or general aggression, like, who, is not having success with women, who is not having as much success with their career as they would like. Maybe they're still living at home with their parents. Like, the more you surround your environment with anchors instead of sails, the closer you're going to be to the bottom of the ocean, and then somewhere out where it's beautiful, And like, I don't know. I think it's taken me so long to like kind of see past my own bullshit of like, you move to a place like Los Angeles either because you were born here or because you sacrificed a lot to get here, and I am in the latter camp. I sacrificed a lot to get here twice. I've lost a lot to stay here, and I don't know. I think I only still do it because like, an unfulfilled life would be really boring to me. Like, if I just like took the money I'm going to make in a couple of years and went to fucking Kansas or something like that and just coasted, like, I don't know what I would do. I would go nuts, Whereas like, if I can build enough wealth where what I get to do from now on is spend time, training with kids on the weekends, giving them a space where, once a month, once every other month, we have a new park that's being opened up within a 45-minute drive, like, I want to create like an exciting environment and community for the people here, because I think we're in a unique position in Southern California where we can create a hub for tourism and athleticism that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country for the sport specifically.
Why? Because of the weather?
I think it's a combination of the weather, the mentality of the people who are here, and the timing.
What's the timing?
The timing is, so the first window of like big parkour community in America is, I would say, like 2007 to 2011 is like, that's like, it's starting to become more popular online. We're starting to see it more frequently, whether it's on television or movies and stuff like that. It's becoming accessible in a way that makes it interesting for the average person who knows nothing about it to go try and do it. And Tempest capitalized on that super well. You know, in the early viral days, like they understood ways to sell it, they understood ways to package it. That I still think is super important, and it is like, it's one of the primary portions of the parkour economy that needs to function is the, I mean, for lack of a better term, the layer one solutions. You know, you need to be able to have some type of centralized solution that provides a service for people who would otherwise not have it, because not everyone is going to have the discipline to go out and get it for themselves. You know, you have to be able to package it and sell it to them. Super important, but it leads to a certain amount of incentives that are monetary based, you know, where that's where the elitism comes in. It comes from the power of association. It comes from like I only need big name athletes, or I can only have these people.
Wait, but monetizing coming from the majority of regular people coming to train there, not from the elite athletes.
Correct.
Right. So in that regard,
but the perception is that it's a boys only club for the elite, and you only get there by invitation, and everyone else originally.
Really? Yeah. Oh no, I never experienced it. Maybe something changed since I
Yeah, and I think part of it is too is like a mentality thing. I was willing to think I was lesser than people, and that allowed me to create that frame where I was. You know,
yeah, it's always a comparison thing.
Yeah, and that's not something I understood for like the first decade in the sport, basically. But now it's like I really think that there's like a confluence of that elitism kind of going away, or like that acceptance coming back up more, but also just there's like, a combination of the weather, the timing, like a ton of big name athletes are moving here. It's like more and more common now for like a big name athlete to be making content somewhere else, and then to realize like, oh, it's like still nice in LA right now, and it looks pretty dope at their jams, you know, like more and more people are starting. I think like 4 to 5 top level athletes have emigrated here within the last like year or so, and I don't think it's going to stop there. Like I think it's going to continue, and I kind of just want to help accelerate that, you know, by like, really my goal is like, I would love to create a nonprofit that essentially acts as like a tax vehicle for the sport. So, say I'm a business, a gym, and I have like a lot of profit this year, you know, and I'm going to have to pay taxes on it, but I can take 10, 50 grand of that, you know, and donate towards this nonprofit, where the nonprofit's goal is to create parks all over Los Angeles County. And
that's a great nonprofit,
right?
And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people, it's very useful, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of investors who would jump on the wagon, because it's a great way to, well, just like all investors, it's a great way to, you know, lower their taxes and get your name on the park and awareness. I think that's actually a worthwhile mission. How does it work? Is it that private money can be donated to the city to do a thing like that, or is it that the city needs to actually make a decision, like a committee decision, and then they I
think it's more the latter. It's a combination of the two. Really, the approach that I'm trying to solidify with it is what I needed to build first was I needed to build a reflex. So on Saturday, people know that they're going to go wherever my event is. And that's it. I don't have to do anything else. It's been 2 years. They know to expect it. They know where they can find the schedule, or they know who they can ask to find it. And if they want it, it is there for them. And I did that partially so that in 5 years from now, when I need to say, hey, there's an event, you know, I need a bunch of people to show up for this to make it look like it's really popping, so that the next time we try and make one, you know, I need to already have some established credibility in that space as a leader in order to get something to actually come from it, you know. But my understanding of it, and it actually works with very little money, and I haven't put it forth yet just because I have my own bills and stuff that I have to handle, but essentially what I would like to do is pay a professional grant writer who understands budgeting constraints and understands timing, you know, for all these different cities. It's their job to just put out a bulk of proposals in every city that possibly has room in their budget for it, and based on that, who has room in their budget, who still has enough time for us to like get the zoning requirements and all of that through or whatever, that's where we start. I don't care if it's closest to Tempest and closest to where it's convenient for the rich families. I care about where do we have room in the budget of these cities where they're going to work with us and they want us to do it, so that's my main concern now is like, I understand I'm a big picture person. I've always been a big picture person. I can think 20 steps down the line and understand things that like, no one's fucking thinking about that because it doesn't work yet, Jacob, relax, but that's what I bring to the table. I'm trying to find more of like a workhorse like portion of the balance that'll help me create that. I need help with that because like, I really am someone who I can execute well when there is a plan and when I have the backing of a group to do it, but I kind of like end up just not doing anything if it's like purely for myself and I mean there are examples where that's not true, but I think it's easier for me with long-term goals like that when I attach it to the need of the group and when I can be honest about the fact that I cannot do it myself. And that's not something that there are parts of it where I think that I am excellent for it. Very good public speaker. I clean up well if I need to go to events, and like talk to city council and stuff like that. I can be the one who's not afraid to speak up and ask questions in a place where like people are very passive and they're not going to do it, unless someone like myself says, hey, this is what we're doing, and then just also the awareness and the understanding that like, I want to create something. And I try very hard to do this with anything that I'm interested in. I'm not deciding how things are. I'm paying attention to how things are and making decisions accordingly, And to me, what we have now with the layer one solutions for the sport, teams, clothing companies, gyms, media subsidiaries, like these are the decision makers within the sport. They make the events, Red Bull, the FIG, pseudo Olympic shit. That's all people who are able to pull the strings, and what is way more interesting to me is a democratized version of the sport where the power is actually in the hands of the people. And that's much more true to places like Europe. Like in Denmark, they have parks fucking everywhere. I remember being 15 years old and just being a mega fan of it, just thinking it's the coolest thing in the world, and like to go from that experience to now like meeting several of my heroes and like having them like know who I am. Like I don't know, it informs the decision to continue, to want to continue, but it also kind of like, it has to be about more than just the activity of like getting better as an athlete. Like that's fun, like I enjoy that a lot, but what gives me like real sense of purpose is like, I didn't kill myself in 2019. I didn't do that because in 40 years from now, I'm going to build a park that gives 10,000 people jobs. They'll never meet because I'm dead, Right.
Maybe way more than a park, probably.
Well, I want to build the parkour equivalent of Disney World. That's
wow.
That's like my 50-year goal. I talk about this all the time. I don't know if I'll ever do this, but this is like, I travel the country and I travel the world a bit so that I can understand how to solve the question, how do I create more jobs in the sport? And I think a lot of how people have approached it so far has been kind of the same thing, the athlete, performer, stunt model, which is great, but it's always going to skew towards the higher end of people. And admittedly, what I'm trying to do kind of does the same thing, but I've worked at Universal, I've worked at Disney World before, so I've seen from behind the scenes kind of like how they function. But really what I want to create is essentially a zoo where you as an athlete, it's your job to go clock in and train anywhere in the city. Nothing is off limits. You will never be asked to get down from there. You can go do whatever the fuck you want. You as a person who's coming will be walking through the buildings and looking outside them or like seeing it on like the screens and stuff like that. And around the corner, you can go to a gym and train with the best in the world if you want to learn yourself, or you can send your kids to summer.
So they're like an example. They're literally part of the tapestry of the city.
Yeah.
They're literally part of the whole vibe of what the city is.
Yeah.
That is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
That is a very cool idea. And maybe even have have it subsidized somehow by the city because it adds a lot to the vibe of the city.
Yeah.
That's a lot of communities because there's a lot of insurances involved, and usually bureaucracy don't like to get involved with like getting hurt.
This would be our own city. So Disney World.
Oh, like its own city.
Disney World is its own city.
Oh,
Disney
I
World
see.
has its own police
No.
station.
I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
I thought you mean no. I actually think that it's also not instead of, but
Yeah.
in addition to. I feel that it would actually be cool to like, let's say, convince
adhere.
Manhattan to fucking have people running around and doing, But again, the problem there is like
a hard
liability.
That's a hard sell.
That's the hard sell. But no, that is a really cool idea. I wanted to say before we wrap up, because we've been going on for I think almost 3 hours.
6 hours.
6 hours. That's the next. I want to beat Joe Rogan. It's like by the end of it, we're just so. What I wanted to say is that you said that you notice what happens and then you act out of that.
Yeah, try to.
But the thing that I'm noticing is that there is not just similarities, but it seems that things happen in a way in the world that can be cross-referenced between domains that seem on the surface to have nothing to do with each other. So there's this book called The Physics of Wall Street, in which they describe how a lot of what we understand about physics is actually applied to how the stock market behaves.
Yeah.
And there's some equations from string theory that Jim Simons found that actually is applicable to everything he does with his hedge fund, or did with his hedge fund, is no longer his, which is the only investment company, I think, till this day. I should probably fact check myself.
Which one is this?
It's hold on. I'll pull it up the second we're done, and in the video I'll put the thing on the video on top.
Yeah.
But I believe it's the one till this day, the only one that never lost money. Mm-hmm. And he never hired financial advisors, people who had experience in the stock market. He only hired scientists, people usually with background in mathematics or physics, and statisticians. I always have a problem with that one. But the point is that there seems to be, or again, fractals, right? The mental chaos theory. We notice that there's certain behaviors, like in what is expressed in the Mandelbrot set, that seem to be ubiquitous across the board, from a tapping faucet to again how the stock market behaves, to how the heart beats, to anything that we can define as a chaotic system, which is a system that is in principle impossible to predict, the weather, things like that. But you can find regularities in it. So the reason I'm saying all of this is because, for example, people always, for example, complain about, like, oh, there's the elites, like I'm not saying you're saying that, but like the rhetoric, right? Like, the 5% own 80% of the money. Yeah. I look at that and I say, wait a second, 80% of the matter in the universe, this is a fact, is contained in about 10% of the clusters of galaxies in the universe.
Yeah.
It's what the universe is doing.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes. So obviously, we don't necessarily just kind of see what the universe is doing and just fall in line. Like, we try to do things our own way. But it seems that certain things are, you can't eradicate them. So I always say, why not play according to what is possible within the frame?
Yeah.
Which means, yes, it might be true that it will always be trillionaires and then people who barely have anything. But what we can always strive for a situation in which the people who barely have anything are still people who have enough to eat and a shelter and everything else. So like the basics in a way that, so the bottom line should be way higher than what it is now. And I'm saying it to the effect that maybe looking at it from the perspective of like you're trying to change this thing and how people go about it, right, in the sport. You have to look at incentives.
Yeah.
Like what incentivizes them to do the things that they do, right? And I think that your mission, what incentivizes you, it seems, is this mission of actually helping other people because it gives you a certain amount of meaning that nothing else ever did.
Yeah.
And that, again, this is the I always have this, whenever I meet people that kind of like have this big problem with Elon Musk, for example, and I kind of happen to really admire the guy. So, I read his biography. I kind of really follow what he's doing as a person. And I think what people have a problem with him, what they don't understand, he's actually not driven by money. He has the money because he's driven by the thing that would actually do the difference, right?
Yeah.
And he showed it by putting risking his personal fortune many times going to zero when he knew that everything else fails, right? So I feel like you have the upper hand here because your mission is to try and create this thing for others. And again, you're doing it for still selfish reasons, which are that it makes you feel good. That's fine. That's how all philanthropy at the end works. But it's still a much better driver than you just trying to acquire recognition or fame or whatever it is, because there's not so much focus of just on you, right? So I guess I was thinking about it along those lines of like, if you want to build this park, or if you want to change the minds of like cities of how they perceive this whole enterprise, look at it from the perspective of incentives purely. And then if you can find out one element that allows, I think that you might have already gotten pretty close, if not completely on the money, which is from everything that you said, it's pretty clear to me that if I'm on some committee in a city and you come to me right now and you say, hey, if we're going to build this park or a couple of them in your city, you're going to have a completely different perception of how your city treats the activities that the young people are doing. So there's going to be more people that are engaging, going outside, interacting with each other. It's a much healthier relationship in the city versus just people being in their homes, playing video games, not doing any of that, right? And I think that is a very, very healthy way of looking at it. That the incentive is to connect people through activity that actually also adds something to the way that the city appears to people who happen to just visit it, basically. Yeah. So I really like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a big thing for me is like, and this is where I have to be careful sometimes because I don't know if it's delusion. I have no idea.
What is specifically?
All of these things, when I talk about like a 50-year goal or something like that, I have no idea if I'm just working.
Well, they're only delusions if you don't execute at all.
Which I understand, but it's hard for me in the moment to know, is it this or is it that, because I have plenty of things that sound just as crazy as that I've never done or that I will do, but it's like finding the balance between like, this is strenuous and stressful for me in a way that is beneficial to me. Like I love that, like talking about parkour equivalent of Disney World, like I have no clue if I'll ever get to do that, but it will give me a reason to chase the bag and make money for the rest of my life, because that's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Sure, but there's also mini steps in between that you can identify, like way smaller ones. Like, hey, can we build a small park?
Yeah,
like a tiny one somewhere in like some neighborhood that nobody heard about.
Yeah.
And it might even be easier to convince that committee in that city hall because it's small and it's not something
which
is
where I want to start. And like I have this like dream of like when they talk about like ancient Greece, like how would you tell like who the best athletes were? They were fucking naked running through the center of town. It wasn't hard to tell. And it's like I kind of have this vision for downtown LA specifically because they're putting up a bunch of new high rises, like over by Grand Park or whatever.
Have a naked guy in each elevator, just going
every elevator.
Oh fuck yeah, man!
Turns back. But no, like I think about that area where they're probably building, I don't know, like 5,000, 15,000 new units or whatever. And they're not done yet, but assuming 2 years from now, when they're done and when they're full, it's gonna be a lot of foot traffic in that part of downtown that there currently isn't, And I just kind of like have this vision of like, what if it's a place where people travel all over the world to see it, like people want to see like, everyone's like so fit and friendly and healthy, like I don't know why we shouldn't be able to have that type of vision of America, like we kind of just allow like we're 25th in education and 64th in this, and it's like we're just like accept it and go back to eating our fucking Fritos, and it's like fuck that, like I don't understand that, I don't resonate with that, like, and even the confines of like tax the rich and all that shit. It's like, okay, cool. If that's what we're going to do, that's fine. But I would much rather understand, okay, rich people have to pay taxes. How do they get away from paying taxes? They take donations. How can I build something that incentivizes rich people to help me help poor people? Like I needed to find ways to work within the game as opposed to just railing my fist at the game, because it like, one, is really depressing to do that. It doesn't get anything done, And two, I do think my brain is uniquely situated to look at these types of problems because no one else has tried to do that in Los Angeles. Because anyone who has tried to come here and make a business is here to make money because it's fucking expensive to live here, and is not focused on something that like objectively, if say I do that, say I make the nonprofit, and I'm able to get X amount of parks built over X amount of decades here, and I dedicate a large portion of my life to it, that probably will equate to status or power, because I'll make more connections with the cities, I'll make more connections with politics and stuff like that with other people who have money. It won't go in my pocket, like it goes towards paying a grant writer to submit for the parks, and then the city gives you the money to build the parks. It's not like that funnels to me. It's like I'm building something for myself that is a thankless job that equates to legacy, that equates to like the ability to, I want kids who have never met me before to have a full-time fucking job that they don't have to worry about, because I helped create it, because I helped make a system for that. Because when I'm honest about my life and when I think about times where I've almost not been here, that is a worthwhile answer. And I love acting and I love singing and I love performing, and that's what a lot of people in my life still associate me with. That's what they still like want from me. Like I posted the other day that I had an audition for an FX show. I'm like starting to get more like big name shows with this agent than I ever have before, which is sick. But I think like 150 people like that or engaged with that, and it's like, that's not common for me to get that on Facebook if it's anything other than acting. But if it's acting, people spark up. People are excited about it. People know that that's what they associate me with. That's what they want from me, But if I'm honest about myself, like if I look back 50 years from now and I have an Oscar and I have all these achievements in acting, that'll feel cool. That'll feel dope. But if I look back in 50 years from now and there's like 1,000 kids who get to like, I think back all the time to like, I've been all around the country and I've met 16-year-old kids who shake my hand and I ask them what they want to do with their lives. And I want to be able to do something with that information. I don't want to just have it go in one ear and say, oh yeah, that's nice. Like, good luck with that kid. I want to be able to say, all right, cool. And a year from now, I'm going to have an event that I want you to come with because you're going to meet the right people who are going to help you make it happen. Like I like being the connective tissue for other people because I know what it's like to be on my own. I know what it's like to have to build it myself. So being able to create that infrastructure where no one else sees the bridge. Everyone just sees the river. They don't see that you could build a bridge there, like because of how my brain processes information, I'm seeing stuff that like no one else has had time to try and build yet, because it's something that takes 30 years to build. It's not something that's going to give you profit after 2 years, like I think if there is someone who could spearhead that, it is someone like me who's not motivated by the financials. I'm motivated by the legacy. I'm motivated by the fact that I'm never going to know that kid, and that kid is going to have a job because I worked for it. Like that, it means more to me than almost anything in my life. I love my family, but I don't purport myself to be a family man because I'm not. So I moved away a long time ago, and I don't make decisions based upon that. I make them based upon myself and what can help my community, But that really is like when I think about purpose, or like the reason for me still being alive after all the bullshit that I've been through, is because I'm going to be able to create opportunities for people that other people are not even thinking about, and it's important to me in a way that like most people, when they have gyms and stuff, they're trying to increase their own status, they're trying to make more money, and they get a nice car and then they just put it off to another 15-year-old kid who's going to work the shitty hours and get paid like shit.
It's business as usual. Yeah,
which is cool. I get it. That's what other people want. That's what that's what they need. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. It feels allergic to me when I'm trying to take advantage of people in that way. Whereas like if I can build something where I don't ever have to ask them for a fucking thing. Those kids can go to those parks and never tell me that they're there, but they can make clips for their own content, and come up on their own that way. And I've helped provide that. They can, meet people in their local area and start doing private coaching there, where they don't have to rely on a gym who's paying them $15 an hour. They can now start charging 20, 30 on their own, I want to create opportunities because I know what it's like to not have any.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to like really be, it was like I said before, your lowest points are the best times to invest in yourself. The same way that you were just articulating about like the law of physics and like the stock market and stuff like that.
It's just that it's the things that seem to be not negotiable, and then you can work within those boundaries. Listen, Jacob, this was a fun one. There's a lot of things we didn't get into, like your music and the book that you mentioned, and actually, I want to explore a little bit more of your like really dark times, not because it makes me feel good, but because I think there's some lessons there to learn from. But yeah, we're coming out with I don't even know what it is, but I think it's like I don't know what it says. I think we went over the fucking
2 or 3 hour limit.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it just continued. Like, I don't know. It reset it to like 47 minutes. But that's a hell of a life story, man. It's like taking something like that and making it into something that is actually functional. Again, for a lot of people, it's hard to understand because it's always easy to just take the road that says, hey, you know, I don't feel comfortable in the presence of that person in that particular situation. And nobody's really obligated to take, you know, things with more than what they seem to them in that moment. But the fact that you take that and you literally take lemons and make lemonade out of them.
Try to, yeah.
That's incredible. I'm very happy that you took the time to come and talk today. And I would actually love to do this again. We can talk definitely. A little bit more about the other things that we didn't touch upon. And man, I honestly kind of fell off the map with the parkour stuff because
you gotta come train.
I'm way too busy, man. Or that's my excuse. I don't know. But I haven't been very physically active in general recently, so I might actually do that. You guys do it
every Saturday.
Every Saturday, and it's a different location every time?
When I started hosting events again, I did it very differently this time than I had in the past, where I was doing a lot of it myself last time and kind of just like inviting everyone and like, I don't know, like really doing my best like to put a lot of effort into it. And now I do it very differently, where it's like I have 1 or 2 other people who I talk with like, hey, we've already been to this spot. Let's go to another spot. And I'm still kind of making decisions based on where can I take 20 people who are not going to get kicked out. It's like, I know that there are other spots in LA, but I don't care about that. I care about creating an experience where for 5 or 6 hours, this is it. They're not going to get kicked out. They don't have to worry about what's going on at home or in their relationship or all the other shit. Just come and train. That's it, you know? To be able to create that like consistency for people has been super important. But yeah, what I did was I found other people who have personality traits that I don't have. I am not soft and cuddly, you know, like I am, hey, fucking listen to me. This is how we're going to do it. And I needed other people who could be like, what Jacob meant to say was this, you know, like I needed kind of that balance. And yeah, Joe helps make the schedule in that regard. And then we put that out at the top of the month and then we share it on our stories and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy for people to see where we're going to be at, you know, and they still end up asking, but it's like, I'm doing everything I can to remove the amount of questions they have to ask, where it's like, it's always at noon. The parking will always be like on the graphic as well. You know, it's like, I try to remove as many questions as I can so that people have less and less of excuse not to show up. So
cool. So I might actually do that on one of those Saturdays.
LACC this week. That's where we'll be at.
Where is that?
It's in Hollywood, East Hollywood.
Okay. Well, no, this Saturday I'm actually shooting. But yeah, there's always something. That's the problem.
Yeah, I feel you.
But usually, yeah, Saturdays are actually not a bad day for me. So I will try and actually make a Saturday. It should be fun to come back and then not be able to walk for a couple of weeks. It'll be great.
Yep.
Yeah. Jacob, thank you so much for doing this, brother. It was an absolute pleasure, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
We'll do it again.
Hell yeah.